in Montgomery County have become big, core Democratic vote-producing counties. Delaware County is the most Democratic of these three, and you can see it was 63-36 here in 2020. The name of the game in all these counties, Democrats want to be landing north of the Joe Biden number from 2020. They're on the Joe Biden number in Delaware County right now. Take a look out in Chester County. Again, this is where Democrats, I said at the start of the night, they want to land over 60% in Chester County. 59-8 for Harris right now, but the wild card is waiting on a lot of same-day vote. Is that going to affect? That number for Harris right now? And move up to Montgomery County. You know, this is, you got cities here on the towns on the main line here, old school. 26 points for Joe Biden. It's 30 right now. Again, 30 would be where Democrats want this to land. The danger for them, though, is there's still a significant amount of same-day vote there. But Democrats need Philadelphia to come through on the mail. They need massive margins to hold in these counties, and they're also going to need that. We'll just check quickly in Allegheny County. We're getting close, by the way. Pittsburgh suburbs, we're getting close to 90% of the vote here. And again, that Harris number here right now is under, small, but it is slightly under the Biden number. The Trump number, 0.4 of a point better than 4 years ago. If this is basically a push with 2020, the Trump folks, if you offered them that at the start of the night, I think they would have taken it. We'll see what that remaining vote does.
Steve, thank you. We've got a few calls that we have to make in Senate races. NBC News can project that there is a winner in the Senate race in Ohio. This is a Republican pickup. This is incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown losing his seat to Republican challenger Bernie Moreno in Ohio. NBC News can also project an interesting Senate result in California. Now, this is Adam Schiff, the Democratic candidate in California, is projected to have won this seat. I need to tell you, though, he wins this both in terms of the regular Senate contest, but he also wins the special, which means that the seat that was vacated by the death of Dianne Feinstein, where LaFonza Butler has been in that seat since Dianne Feinstein's death, Adam Schiff will not only take over the full term of that seat, he will also take this seat immediately in the Senate from California. One additional call in New Mexico, the Senate race in New Mexico. NBC News projects that incumbent Democratic Senator at this hour, this is the balance of power in the United States Senate. And this was a big one because this means a +2 net gain for the Republicans. They are now at 49 seats. Democrats are at 39 seats. There are 12 seats uncalled. We've got to go in a moment. We're going to go to Michelle Norris, who is at Harris campaign headquarters at Howard University. Lawrence, I just wanted to get your reaction to that Senate news.
In terms of the
all right, guys, welcome to The Vote 2024. I'm your host, Andre Jaho. We're going to be doing the watch party. I got here, I'm not going to say I'm late. This is an all-night affair, so I had to do some things, prepare myself to, to do the show. So now we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and we're just going to do this show. So stick with me. Put in the comments where you're watching from. But yeah, this is just a watch party. We're following it through MSNBC. So we'll just be watching it there and listening to the latest.
one of those miracle workers politically of the Senate who can
write in the comment. Let me know if you guys can hear me. If you can hear the news feed that's playing. Let us know in the comments. Appreciate that.
Amounts of money into Ohio against him this time.
Yeah,
just massive.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes.
Exactly. We're joined now by MSNBC senior contributing editor Michelle Norris. She's at Harris Election Night headquarters at Howard University. Michelle, what are you seeing?
Hey, Rachel. Well, the crowd here is still large, is still loud, but a little bit more subdued. And the word that I keep hearing, it must be some new phrase that has entered the lexicon, is the idea that people here are nauseously optimistic. Not just cautiously optimistic, but nauseously optimistic. And one of the people I heard that from was
Hope you all went out and voted.
spoke to her just a while ago, and she was speaking about.
And right now, we're just waiting for the
She
results.
mentioned North Carolina, for instance, called by some, not by us yet, thinks it doesn't look good there. But one of the interesting things she said that's echoed by a few other people that I spoke to is that the real focus now is on that blue wall in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and that second district in Omaha, Nebraska, that sort of blue oval at the
Got
top
my
of the
little
state.
snacks with me right here.
Pennsylvania, the thought was that Donald Trump
Combos
may have had a
and
ceiling,
Ritz.
that there was a certain number of votes that he got in 2016, 2020. They were
These are the
hoping that
best.
he would not exceed those numbers. They are actually outperforming Joe Biden in some key areas, but it's clear now that Donald Trump has picked up key support.
Dr. Jill,
among
how
Hispanic
are you?
voters, Despite all
How
the
are
things
you
that he
doing?
said at that rally at Madison Square Garden, despite the reaction that
Doing
we
our
saw
little
among
watch
Latino
party.
voters in places like Allentown and Hazleton, and so people here are watching and they're wondering what's going to happen in Pennsylvania. They're ready for a long night. And one of the reasons
Right now,
also is that they wanted to inject so much joy into the beginning of this.
if you're looking
is
at the way
because
everything
they
is
knew,
looking,
that's why
it
they
looks
brought the
like
DJ and the dancing and the line dancing, because they knew that this was going to be a
Trump
long
is winning,
night,
but it's still
and that it was
close.
gonna be a real nail-biter,
It's too
and it
close to
appears
call
that
right
that
now,
is
guys.
Exactly what we're looking at right now.
Michelle Norris at Howard University, where the Harris campaign is posted up and watching these results as avidly as any of us. Michelle, we'll be back to you as the night progresses. Let's go to Simone Sanders Townsend. Simone, I understand you've got some reporting from sources related to the sources on the campaign about Pennsylvania.
Yes, people who are very familiar with the numbers and in the know, and people within, frankly, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and folks specifically in Philadelphia. Democrats believe that they have tens of thousands of votes that are outstanding from Philadelphia County. These are absentee ballots, and they believe that within the hour, at least 3 individuals have told me that within the 11 p.m. hour, that those votes are going to come in again from, specifically, these are votes from Philadelphia County, and those numbers will bode well for Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. Now, and they are saying it is going to be close, very, very close, but they believe that those tens of thousands of outstanding ballots are going to make a difference. My Pennsylvania people are telling me that the next batch is expected at 11:55.
So, Simone, to be clear, are they enthusiastic about what those votes are going to say? Or are they enthusiastic about their chances overall?
Yes, they are enthusiastic about what those votes are going to say. And they are, as Michelle Norris noted, nauseously optimistic. People are nauseously optimistic. They're clear-eyed. And people within the campaign and then strategists surrounding the campaign have all said to me within the last hour, we have been clear that it was going to be close. Now, folks may not have believed that given the energy and the momentum, but the campaign itself and the folks specifically with very close to the campaign have always been clear that this was going to be a close race. They believe Pennsylvania is still in play, and I do also think that it's my understanding of they have a sense of that the reality is that Georgia is not an option for a win this go round, and North Carolina is not looking like it as well, but folks need to wait and see. Wake County, rest of Mecklenburg County in North Carolina will make a difference. Wisconsin, I will note, folks in Wisconsin say they think it'll be a classic Wisconsin photo finish, but they feel good about where they are. They specifically noted about Dane County because they've seen numbers that say the vice president, is not performing as well in Dane County. They've seen reporting about that as Biden, and they note that the wards that haven't reported in Dane County are very blue areas around Madison. And so the folks in Wisconsin are also feeling good. And they tell me that 3 campuses, students are still voting right now as we speak.
All right. Simone Sanders Townsend, thank you. I want to go to our friend Michael Steele, who I understand has been talking to sources about the results in Michigan. What are you hearing, Michael?
Yeah, it's very interesting right now that a number of the folks that I've been talking to there in Michigan, Republicans are looking a little bit, how should we say, skeptical of holding Michigan for Trump right now, looking at some of the numbers that have been coming in. I know as we still have big centers like Detroit that are going to land. but the reality on the ground there, they have a lot of hope in that they look like they will flip the House to the Republicans, but may give some ground to Trump. They're still looking through some of the numbers, but it's a little bit up in the air for the Trump hold on Michigan. So the narrative around the blue wall still holds a bit. I mean, Pennsylvania and Michigan are really kind of those two bookends, with Wisconsin sitting right there for Kamala Harris right at the moment.
All right, Michael Steele, thank you very much. We do have a little bit of intel ourselves from the campaign. NBC News has obtained an email to campaign staff that was sent out by the campaign manager for Kamala Harris, Jen O'Malley Dillon. I'm just going to tell you what we got. Quote, while we continue to see data trickle in from the Sunbelt states, we have known all along that our clearest path to 270 electoral votes lies through the blue wall states. And we feel good about what we're seeing. Again, this is an email from the Harris
Leave a comment.
campaign
Let us know if
manager,
you
Jen
voted
O'Malley
today,
Dillon.
if you didn't vote.
This is an email to campaign staff. This email has been obtained by NBC News. I'll continue to quote it.
What are your
O'Malley Dillon
expectations
says
for
the Harris
this,
campaign has, quote, overperformed
the
turnout
winner,
expectations in
whoever that
Philadelphia,
might be?
and that they're waiting for
What
a,
are you looking
quote,
for them to do
significant
for
amount
the
of votes to
economy,
come in from Michigan,
so forth?
including from the city of Detroit. O'Malley Dillon says they're also waiting for a significant amount of vote from Wisconsin's Dane
I love
County
these combos.
and Milwaukee County, adding they do not expect Wisconsin's complete results until between 3 and 5 a.m. We've been saying for weeks, says O'Malley Dillon, quote, that this race might not be called tonight. Those of you who were around in 2020 know this well. It takes time for all the votes to be counted. All the votes will be counted. That is how our system works. What we do know is this race is not going to come into focus until the early morning hours. Jen Psaki, let me get your reaction to that.
Well, just reading this, I was thinking of what's happening in the boiler room. That's a very high-pressure thing. You call it on a campaign, but Nicole and I have probably spent a collective hundreds of hours in boiler rooms. It's basically where you have the top campaign strategists and teams looking at, like our team looked at the decision desk, right? They have a team of people that do the decision desk. What's different in a campaign is that you're also looking at vote goals in these counties and what you're trying to achieve, right? So in these county, in Philly, they're trying to run up the vote numbers by a great deal, higher than Biden did. And they're looking at, what the percentages were then. And Biden did about 2 percentage points is better than Clinton in a lot of the key parts of
Darlene, how
Pennsylvania.
are you?
So they're looking at that.
Hope
but they're
everything
also
is
looking
well.
at the rural counties and where they're
Just
doing
doing
there
our
and how
vote
they can
watch
do.
party here.
So as the information comes in the boiler room, they're recalculating where they need to do better in certain states, in addition to looking at the path. So to me, it's interesting. Obviously, there hasn't been a call from here in some of the states that she doesn't mention in this email, but it is quite telling that she really focuses on the blue wall states here, which again, as Nicole said earlier, has long been probably a baseline of the path and is a core to the path, and they see it that way. The last thing I'll just say, the thing that becomes hard on campaigns is as the path narrows, right?
Yeah.
Because part of the objective of this email is to say to the people on the team, hang in there, guys. Like, it's not over. We're still getting votes in. We still need to
What's up, Clay?
keep talking to people, keep people
up,
in
man? How you
lines,
doing?
tell your grandma it's going to be okay. That's part of the
Hope
objective
everything's
of
good,
an email
man.
like that, too.
Yeah. We do have a couple of calls to make. While we have been discussing this, we've got a couple of projections from NBC News. In the presidential race in Connecticut, NBC News can project that the winner of that presidential race will be Vice President Kamala Harris.
All right now.
NBC News can also project that we have a winner in the presidential contest in Washington state. The winner there also Kamala Harris. NBC News can also make a projection in the Senate race in Washington state. In that Senate race, we've got an incumbent Democratic Senator, Maria Cantwell. She will be returning to the United States Senate from Washington state. Steve, over to you.
Look at a few more things we're getting
Steve
in.
Kornacki.
First of all, I want to point this out. This is what the national popular vote is right now. Now, customarily, we've seen this the last two elections, 20 and 16, that Trump has led in the tally of the national popular vote, well into the night. And typically what you see certainly is California comes in late, and it takes a while to get all the vote counted there. And that's just a millions of vote margin for Democrats. So certainly this is going to change, and we're just starting to get California in. But outside of the core battleground, there are a couple things that I want to flag. A couple states that it's awfully late in the night and we don't have calls on yet that I think a lot of folks might have expected we would. Let me start in Virginia, where 80% of the vote is now in. And Kamala Harris, you see, is ahead here by about 2.5 points in the count. But again, In 2020, this was a 10-point state for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. What's changed tonight? Where has Trump made progress in Virginia? Take a look here. Loudoun County. This is one, if you remember that governor's race in Virginia in 2021 when Glenn Youngkin won, we talked an awful lot about Loudoun County, suburbs, exurbs of Washington, D.C., just lightning fast growth here. Biden won this thing by 25 points. It's been getting leaps and bounds more Democratic. Look what happened in Loudoun County tonight. What had been a 25-point win for Joe Biden comes down to a 16-point win. And again, Trump needs to be improving to win Virginia, on average by about 10 points in these counties. He comes very close to it there in Loudoun County. Take a look, Prince William County. This is a very densely populated and a very diverse county. Again, significant Hispanic population. Biden won this by 27, down to 18 points tonight. Just about all in there in Prince William County. Virginia Beach, we still have a lot of vote to come in Virginia Beach. And this is one, this is where Joe Biden won by 5. This is one when Glenn Youngkin became governor. He flipped and won. And Trump right now leading this by 6 points. Again, that would be an 11-point shift here. There's a lot of areas here, that Trump would still need to do even better in if he were actually going to overtake Harris here. But the fact that it's this late at night and Trump has made gains that have held this so much so far, it's significant. It's part of why that popular vote is maybe a bigger lead this hour than you thought Trump would have. Bigger reason, though, is this. This is why I raised it. New York, look, it's been called. Harris is going to win New York. Her margin is 12 points. Check this out. In 2020, it was 23 points for Joe Biden. With nearly 90% of the vote in, Harris is only winning this by 12 points. Now, first of all, from a national popular vote perspective, Biden won this state by 2 million votes in 2020. The margin isn't yet 1 million, and we're getting close to all the vote in New York. And I want to zoom in a little bit closer here because I think this is significant. Let's look at New York City itself. The 5 boroughs of New York City, they're each their own individual county. And let me just show you what's happened here. Overwhelming Democratic city. Manhattan, the most liberal county in New York, a portion of New York, 86-12, a 74-point Biden win, down to 63. Trump's made double-digit gains in Manhattan. Take a look at Queens, 45-point Joe Biden win in 2020, down to 24, a 20-point net gain so far for Donald Trump in Queens, New York. Take a look over at Brooklyn. 55 has come down to 43. Staten Island's very small population-wise. It is the Republican borough of New York City. And you can see even there, though, Trump has gained a net of about 20 points with just about all the vote in there. And again, I flag that because we are seeing it in New York. Trump's gains with Hispanic voters, working class Hispanic voters. You're seeing it in New York City. It's being reflected in that statewide vote here, which has come down significantly. And even if you go across the Hudson River into New Jersey has 85% of the vote tallied. We have not yet called it. Now, Kamala Harris is ahead here by nearly 200,000 votes. But again, contrast this to New Jersey in 2020. This was a 16-point state. Tonight, it is a 5-point race with 85% of the vote tallied. The margin here in 2020 was about 800,000 votes for Joe Biden. Tonight, it hasn't yet cracked 200,000. Again, that has potential national popular vote implications for those who are tracking that. But I wanted to point out New Jersey. Again, we see Harris is in pretty good shape to win the state. But take a look at Hudson County. Hudson County, just across there, this is where Union City, New Jersey is, for instance. It's 80% Hispanic. A lot of small, densely populated cities in Hudson County with large Hispanic populations. Joe Biden won here by 46 points. Tonight, it's 28 points. This is basically it in Hudson County, from 46 to 28. This is one of those giant core Democratic counties in New Jersey the Democratic Party relies on. That's a massive, massive shift. And again, that speaks to Trump's gains, it really would seem, with Hispanic voters. So again, those are some of the states here that have bearing on the national popular vote. We saw the polls nationally much tighter than before. We wondered if Trump was going to narrow the margin in some of those big states. That is what we're seeing. I did want to follow up on Wisconsin, too, now getting close to 70% of the vote in. And yes, we were just talking about Dane and the question of what was left and could the Democrats here hit that margin that they got out of 2020. And it's true. Okay, well, here we go. Now we're up to 95%. So we just, since I checked in a few minutes ago, we got more. We're getting close to all of the vote in
If you're watching
Dane
on
County,
YouTube, leave us a comment.
163,000. That's the
Let us
Harris
know that
margin
you're
in
watching.
Dane
We'd
County,
appreciate that.
163,000. In 2020, that was about 182,000.
If you are watching on
182,
YouTube, let us know that you're watching.
We'll see if there's any more votes to come, but when that hits 95%, there usually aren't. So again, if anything like that holds, boy, Democrats want to be at that number. This is where they've improved their performance every time for 4 years. Where Democrats have improved tonight, where Harris has improved, or it looks like she will, not much to come in Waukesha. Big county, 400,000 people live here. One of those wow counties right outside Milwaukee. And here again, Trump got, basically 60%, 60 to 39. Trump falling a point here so far. Harris rising a point over Biden. So that is progress for Democrats in a very big county. You take a look here at Ozaukee County. And again, this one, now we got about 3/4 of the vote in. And Trump is running a bit above, not much. It's basically level with his 2020 number. Again, this is one where Democrats want to get a couple points better, see what happens with that remaining vote. And we talked at the start of the night about, we say the wow counties and the bow counties here. Brown County, Outagamie County, Winnebago County, mid-sized cities along sort of the Fox River, Lake Winnebago. These are all counties that Donald Trump won in 2020, but with reduced margins. Is he returning to 2016 levels, or is he back at 2020 level? So Outagamie County here, again, this is where the city of Appleton is. In 2016, when Trump won Wisconsin, he won this county by about 13 points. In 2020, when he lost Wisconsin, it was a 10-point margin. And tonight, as you can see, 67%. It's back at that 13-point spread right now. Now, again, votes still to come in Outagamie County, but I only flag this because we are seeing it in an awful lot of places tonight where Trump is returning to 2016 levels. These aren't always dramatic shifts, but Wisconsin's a state. When Trump won it, it was by 20,000 votes. When Biden won it, it was by 20,000 votes. So these kinds of differences can make all the difference. See what happens with the remaining vote there, but that's something we've been seeing in other places in this northern tier of the battleground all through the night. Again, now up near 70%. It's very close here, about 67,000 votes. More to come out of those wow counties, and we'll see if there's anything left there in Dane, but if that number doesn't move, that's a little bit below, I think, where Democrats wanted to be there.
All right, Steve, thank you. We've got a call to make in a Senate race. NBC News can project that in the Senate race in the great state of Minnesota, we have that projection? There we go. The Senate race in the great state of Minnesota, Democratic incumbent Senator Amy Klobuchar will be heading back to the United States Senate. Amy Klobuchar reelected in Minnesota. We're going to take a quick break right now. There's a bunch of other Senate races right now where we haven't checked in for a little while. Important Senate races in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, Nebraska. Lots of interesting Senate races still to come. We're going to check in on those on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
All right, you heard that. It'll be a commercial break. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Liv, and I want to welcome you to the So Graceful Sisterhood. This is a community where women can come to embrace their authenticity, reconnect to their feminine energy, and cultivate the life that they truly desire. I know how it feels to be overwhelmed by the demands of life, to feel disconnected from your true self, constantly pushing to meet expectations, while deep down, you know there's more. More grace, more joy, more alignment waiting to be uncovered. That's why I created the So Graceful Sisterhood. This is a space where spiritual women can come together to activate their authenticity, flourish in their feminine energy, and grow in grace while building the life they truly desire. It's not just about practicing self-care. It's about living it every day in everything we do. When you join the So Graceful Sisterhood, you'll have access to guided yoga practices, meditation sessions, and spiritual workshops, all designed to help you reconnect with yourself and grow in ways you never thought possible. But even more than that, you'll be joining a sisterhood of women who support each other, celebrate each other, and grow together. If you're ready to embrace your authenticity, align with your divine feminine energy, and join a sisterhood that supports you at every step of your journey, I invite you to join us in the So Graceful Sisterhood. Your grace-filled, aligned life is waiting for you. Click the link below to become a member today. I can't wait to see you inside.
All right. That That was the So Graceful Sisterhood. Y'all want to join that? You saw the website on the screen. Please, if you are looking for a sisterhood, you're looking for community, family. That's it right there. Thank you to the So Graceful Sisterhood for sponsoring this broadcast.
Original podcast. All episodes available now.
When
This
I
is
worked for
our
Senator
watch
Daniel
party,
Patrick
y'all.
Moynihan, I learned about commitment. Senator Moynihan committed his life to
Leave a
government
comment.
service.
Let us know you're watching.
This is what commitment
We'd
looks
appreciate
like.
it.
Building New York's newest train station was Senator Moynihan's idea. It took
Talk to
30
us.
years and never giving up. When we register to vote, we make a lifetime commitment to democracy, a commitment to vote for all levels of
Let
government,
us know you're watching.
working
guys.
together to build a better America.
Severe weather events have become an all too common part of our lives. They are growing more severe all the time, and their link to climate change is undeniable.
Climate scientists have been warning more 100-degree days in future years.
As a country and as a planet, we need to cut our emissions to try to limit the worst effects of climate change.
Congress and the rest of the country needs to start taking this seriously, or it's just going to get worse.
It's how we respond as a global community that's going to define the next chapters of the climate crisis.
Yep, I'm excited.
I want our viewers to feel seen and heard.
Really hope
Suddenly
Kamala
they
wins.
change the rules. I want them to feel like I'm their voice. So what they are
There's some
screaming
people-
at their television.
Some people that really don't want a woman president. They really don't. One of my coworkers last night said, "I just can't support that woman." I mean, to each his own. We all have our opinion, you know. But you know what I'm saying? I'm cool with it.
NBC News
I'm cool with it.
can project at
Oh,
this
here we
hour
go.
in the presidential race in the state of Virginia that there is a winner in Virginia.
All right.
Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris has won the presidential contest in the state of Virginia. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential contest in North Carolina. NBC News projects that the winner in the presidential race in the state of North Carolina is Donald Trump. This is our first projection of a result in any of the 7 big swing states. The first swing state to be projected by NBC News tonight is North
This is where it
Carolina,
really counts,
going
guys.
to Donald Trump. I understand we also have a change in the characterization of the presidential race in Minnesota. In Minnesota, this had previously been characterized as too early to call. Minnesota now characterized by NBC News as too close to call. Looking at the overall map, the road to 270, right now Donald Trump stands at 230 electoral votes. Kamala Harris stands at 185. Again, of the 7 swing states that we and everybody else has been watching, we now have an NBC News call in the first one, Joy. North Carolina called for Donald Trump.
Yep, and so it was, it's a state that I think Democrats definitely were reaching for. There was a lot of work to try to turn out the college campuses, which were really thick and really packed, and try to turn out the suburbs. And I think there was a lot of hope because of just the insanity, can we say fairly, of the person who's running for governor in that state, and a thought that, defeating him would also carry Harris in. But in the end, if they didn't make their numbers and essentially exceed the numbers that Joe Biden had in the suburbs, and I think we have to be blunt about why. Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state, is that if you can't flip enough white women, and we've talked about this on this set numerous times, is that you have a state where you've got a 6-week abortion or a 12-week abortion. I think theirs might be 12 weeks.
Yep.
But it's a state where women lost their reproductive rights, where there was a very heavy push to get women to focus on not putting in place, re-electing, putting back into the White House the person who was responsible for taking those rights away and restoring them. But that message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And, God bless Shannon Watts, who has tried to have that conversation. But if people aren't receptive to it, and if people vote more party line or more on race than on gender and on protecting their gender, there's really not much more that you can do but tell people what the risks are and leave it to them to do the right thing.
Steph?
People didn't have any surprises here. We do have to remember when it comes to North Carolina, they just went through the hurricane. We know that the state made tons of accommodations and people were able to get to the polls in an abbreviated form. But they also were victims to a huge amount of misinformation over the last 4 weeks. You cannot underestimate the impact that had. But to Joy's point, there's no surprises in this election. People knew exactly who they were voting for and what they were getting. So they get what they get.
I want to talk about Mark Robinson for a second, because I think it's sort of interesting. Mark Robinson is like running an experiment, which is like, what's the floor? What's the floor for someone who's a major party nominee in a swing state, in basically a closely done?
Remind people who he is.
Mark Robinson is the current lieutenant governor of North Carolina running for governor. He is the one who said he was called himself a Nazi at one point on the Nude Africa Forum, where he had a long set of exchanges in which he said basically every single offensive thing a person could do. He has a very, very long history of saying incredibly repellent, omnidirectionally offensive statements about just about every group imaginable. He is the opposite of what you would call like diplomatic or like political. He's gonna get his, he lost, right? So he lost by a lot. He got 40%. So like, to me, I look at that 40%, I think, where does everyone start in the structurally polarized America that we live in? And the answer is Mark Robinson at 40% North Carolina. Like that guy ran about as bad a race. He was abandoned by the top of the ticket. He was abandoned by fellow Republicans.
Abandoned by his entire staff.
By the entire staff. He had just about the worst news cycles you've ever seen for any candidate. Yep. And in basically what has been a 50-50 state, more or less, so it's a good experiment, that is the floor, is 40. So the reason that matters is because there's two things happening in every election. There's the structural stuff that's happening, and then there's what happens in that campaign, what the candidates are, what's happening in the news. The structural stuff in this country is like the 40%.
Yeah.
That structural stuff is moving in all sorts of interesting directions, and Steve has been talking about them. The realignment we've seen of working class voters moving from parties to the left to parties to the right, that's happened in every single OECD developed democracy across the world over the last 16 years, 20, you can go back further. Because of how structurally polarized we are, everything's happening at the margins. And the margins are 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. In a room of 100 people with people wearing different colored shirts, that's like 3 people changing the color of their shirt. It's 4 people changing the color of their shirt. That's where everything happens in American politics right now.
Well, and I think it goes back to what David Plouffe said there, and said they built a campaign for Kamala Harris to try to defeat a Donald Trump that had a 48% ceiling. It looks like from some of what Steve Kornacki is telling us that his ceiling might have been higher this time.
Well, we talked to David exactly about that this idea that his ceiling was 46.1 or 46.7, it had always been that. And so there'll be much more time to follow this. We are following the story and the facts, and the story's not over. But if Donald Trump did increase that margin over what had been a 8-year ceiling, right, there will be much to say and much to study about whether that was because of some newfound appreciation for him and his ideas, or whether this was an economy election. And we've had many of them. And there's many a politician who will say, oh, this happened, that means you like me more, I have a bigger mandate. And sometimes it's not that. It's that high prices and inflation after COVID disruptions.
This race is still close, guys. Everything is still close.
Working class voters
really close.
Are actually mad at everyone. They're mad at the system. They're mad
I don't know
at
who's
the
gonna win right now.
And Democrats have thought in the last few years, listen, look at all that we've done for unions. Look what we've done for labor in this country. But we forget, not all working class voters are members of unions, right?
But
and so there's a huge
we will see.
Correct. And I think that gets overlooked.
We will see who
And while
wins.
we can all say, but Donald Trump does absolutely nothing for them, that's true from a policy perspective. But they look around and somehow still they feel connected with his personality. They like the way he speaks. And he speaks
A lot
to
of
them and
people
says,
like
you
the way
are
he
forgotten.
speaks.
You know what Joe Biden did? He forgave student loan debt for college-educated people who have all sorts of job opportunities. You continue to be forgotten. And so while they haven't found any policy solutions for him, and I can go through everything that Joe Biden has done from beyond what he's done with unions. We can talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. We can talk about infrastructure plans. We can talk about all the training programs in many of those rural communities, whether it's Georgia and Pennsylvania. But many of them aren't underway yet, and it takes time, right?
But just briefly, I'm not speaking to that, I'm just saying that when the economy is bad enough and that's front and center, people tend to vote against what they see as the incumbent party. In this case, you had an incumbent vice president. And all I'm saying, and we don't know yet, I'm just saying that, is it that everyone gave Donald Trump a bigger hug because he closed so well? Again, talking about the total vote. We're not issuing any new calls other than the North Carolina call Rachel just made. But in the total vote trends, is it that, or is it something we've seen from time going back to the beginning of elections, that when people are mad about the economy, they vote against the incumbent?
Or they don't vote at all, because I think we also forget that we are a 60% on a good year turnout country. There are a lot of people, especially low wealth people. You know, this is the Bishop Barber thing he talks about all the time on our shows.
There's a lot of people that did not vote. I could tell by the numbers that I'm seeing right now.
And so there's a checking out
I
of the
can
system
tell.
and saying, I'm not receiving economic
I could tell you I didn't
benefits.
vote.
College loan
I know.
forgiveness doesn't impact me.
I'm looking at the numbers.
And so people are actually, in some cases in this country, backing out of voting altogether. So I think there's a tendency to think it's poor people voting against their best interests, when in many cases, poor people aren't voting at all. And so they're just not a part of the system. And so what you have is higher net worth and higher education voters voting versus rural working class voters. But just remember, working class does not mean poor. You could be working class, meaning you're a non-college voter, but you actually have, you know, a second home somewhere in, you know, the Hamptons, and you work in a plumbing business, and you have, you're not necessarily poor. So I think we have to be careful in characterizing it as necessarily low-wage people voting against their interest, and figuring out how to get them in the system at all.
We have a call to make. NBC News can make a projection of a winner in the governor's race in the great state of Washington. Do we have that? You guys didn't know that's how I usually do it,
That's
right?
how you make it happen.
NBC News projects that the governor's race in Washington, the Democrat Bob Ferguson will be the next governor in Washington. Republican opponent Dave Reichert. But Democrat Bob Ferguson will be the winner there. I had mentioned that we were going to talk about some of the tight Senate races that we've got right now. We are still going to do that. But I want to go first to Philadelphia. Our own Jacob Soboroff is at the Tabulation Center in Philly, which is kind of the center of the political universe right now. Jacob, what are you seeing?
Rachel, last I spoke with at this door.
I know Jacob Soboroff. I like him. I'm gonna let y'all see a little behind the scenes of what we're doing here.
Around midnight Eastern time, and I have some specific numbers that may or may not be useful to Steve and you all there. He tells me that around 50,000 votes will be a part of that next.
All right, this is behind the scenes, y'all.
Eastern time, and that would leave a total universe, according
Y'all can kind of see how I'm
37,000 votes left, but that would include
producing.
ballots that won't be counted, like unsigned ballots, undated ballots, no secrecy envelopes, and other ballots that, for whatever reason, don't.
And we're getting that feed. That's our feed
50,000 ballots to be released
from NBC News.
minutes, and then 37,000.
Going into the iPad.
Just quickly show you. It looks like actually maybe there's some ballots.
See the audio right there.
Right now we see a police car escort with two different vans. But
Then I set.
just take a look through the window here, because this is the one.
Oh, y'all see me on the set right here.
Election workers here in Philadelphia that is not their camera processing the ballots, and they're all in there now going through the process.
Yeah. This is how we do our little behind the scenes, and then that's what's over there. That's my main camera.
The information about those additional 50,000 ballots, and then again, just underscore, tomorrow morning there will be another release here in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Yeah. So y'all see that right there?
Go ahead, Rachel.
Just showing y'all a little stuff,
In case you couldn't see, when you were poking your nose into that window, looking through that window, there was a security officer and/or cop inside who was very displeased about the fact that you were doing that. Just so you know, in case there's an unfriendly
Here, I'll give you one more
encounter.
peek. Just one quick peek. I think they left. Take a look.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. When you get the tap on your shoulder momentarily, don't tell them that you know us, Jacob.
It's coming. It's coming.
We will always have your back. I'm kidding.
Ask for forgiveness and permission, Soboroff.
Honestly, I mean, if you're Jacob Soboroff, you just turn on the
You
channel.
don't ask for permission, you ask for forgiveness. That's my motto.
Me? How could I be held accountable for any of these things. All right, let us go back to some of those Senate boards, which I think we had one of them up there first, looking first at the Pennsylvania Senate race. We're going to look at some of the Senate races that are not yet called. NBC News projecting in the Senate race in Pennsylvania.
This is our behind the scenes.
This is a too close to call race.
This is how we're producing this show right here, y'all. What y'all think about that?
Republican challenger Dave McCormick. This is over 80% of the vote in Pennsylvania.
That's the microphone right here that we're talking through right now.
This is Alyssa Slotkin, the Democrat, versus Mike Rogers, the Republican, with just over 40% of the vote in. Here's Wisconsin. Wisconsin Senate race.
That's a little setup.
Democratic incumbent Tammy Baldwin facing a Republican challenger Eric Hovde. This is with just over 70% of the vote in. This is where things stand in Wisconsin. Here's Arizona, just over half the vote in Arizona. This is too early to call. You see Congressman Ruben Gallego there with just over 52% of the vote. Carrie Lake just under 46% of the vote. That's with just over half the vote counted. Too early to call in Arizona.
Oh yeah, I was supposed to send that
This is a very interesting one. Too early to call. Here's an incumbent Republican, Deb Fischer. Her opponent here is not a Democrat. He's an independent, Dan Osborne, who's actually said that he won't caucus with either party. We don't know exactly what that would mean if he won, but the status between them here, you can see on your screen, almost 50-50, with about 60% of the vote in. Also looking at Montana. Very interesting. We've only got about 14% of the vote in Montana. This is incumbent Democratic Senator John Tester and a Republican challenger, Tim Sheehy. This is too early to call, just about 14% of the vote in that Montana Senate race. I think if, Democrats, obviously their pie in the sky view of these Senate races was that Florida was within reach against Rick Scott with Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, and maybe Texas was within reach with Ted Cruz versus Colin Allred. Now I think that we're down to figuring out what the Republican margin is likely to be, honestly.
Yes, and one of the things that we're seeing in those key races that we have not called, Michigan and Wisconsin, for instance, we saw, going all the way back to the spring, a delta, a gap between the polling for the Senate statewide incumbent Democrat and the top of the ticket when it was Biden, and that persisted when it was Kamala Harris, which is to say the Senate top of the ticket candidate running ahead of the national ticket. And there was always a question about whether that was an artifact in the measurement and they were converge or there's something picking up there. What we're seeing tonight looks like convergence. It looks like, with the exception of Arizona, in which Ruben Gallego, it looks like, is going to outperform.
I'm about to make a TikTok, y'all, while we're listening.
Is such a
Don't mind me.
Poor candidate after her loss 2 years ago. With those other kind of, I would call them kind of generic R's. They're sort of classic Mitch McConnell recruits in both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. These are extremely wealthy guys who self-funded, which is like Mitch McConnell's favorite because it takes some money off the balance sheet for his Senate Leadership Fund. Honestly, it's like you guys do that. That's less checks we have to cut for the Senate Leadership Fund. These are very classic McConnell recruit generic R guys.
That's Dave McCormick.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And they're running, they're converging with the top of the ticket.
This is
All right, y'all. We are
right, a hedge fund manager who's
actually
the president
live
of
on TikTok if y'all can see that.
most successful hedge
Well,
funds in the world.
we're not
who
live,
had
we're
some
recording on
heritage
TikTok.
from Pennsylvania.
We're
He's
live
married
on
to Gina
YouTube.
Powell, who, of course, was
So
a
this is
senior
what it
advisor
looks
to
like
Donald
right now.
Trump, and he absolutely was in a position to self-fund. But it's noteworthy because Bob Casey is sort of expected to win that race and be in line with Kamala
This is
Harris.
just a
So if,
setup
in fact, Dave McCormick
while we're doing the show.
does prevail in Pennsylvania, what could that mean for Kamala Harris in her potential strength in Pennsylvania?
This has helped Republicans. When we look at Ohio, where you say the Democrats had one with a strong record, even against tailwinds that go, a long ways. However you want to say it, Sherrod Brown was doing 5 points better than the Harris finish, or Moreno was doing 5 points worse than Trump. Either way you cut it, there's some edge there of incumbency and populism, but he's running in an area where the Republican is up 10, and so he's got to deal with that.
Yeah, and I just, to speak about Sherrod Brown, whose board we're showing right now, we have the call that race for the challenger, Bernie Moreno. I mean, here's an example of the river, the motion of the river of the realignment that's happening across all of these democracies that everyone is swimming in. No
That's how
one
we doing this.
swam against that river.
I'm just showing TikTok what I'm doing right now.
than
We're doing the
Sherrod
TikTok
Brown, who
real
I
quick.
first profiled in 2006 when he was running for the Senate.
Quick
He wrote a
behind the
book
scenes.
railing against NAFTA when it was the least popular thing in the world to do as a first or second term congressman. All of the stuff you hear from Trump and J.D. Vance about
Yes, I
trade,
hope you guys voted.
building
Hope you
America,
guys
this has
voted.
been Sherrod
We're
Brown's brand,
doing a live
his
stream
core
right
belief,
now.
His principles, the things
Doing
he's
a live
fought for
stream
and
right
voted for
now
his entire life
on
in
Facebook
that state.
and
So
YouTube.
far, he has been successful
that's why we're in our
managing to swim
studio.
against that tide. And
So
tonight,
y'all seeing behind the scenes right
a
now, y'all.
Mercedes-Benz dealer. Really, but like beat
Getting
him.
to see behind the
And
scenes.
that's
Hold on,
where,
not
like,
just a Mercedes-Benz dealer, a man who's made a tremendous amount of money in cryptocurrency.
Yes.
So Bernie Moreno's first target is going to be the
Yep,
SEC
this is
chair.
what the show
Gary
looks
Gensler.
like,
I also
y'all.
say there was about a $40 million spend from the outside crypto super PAC.
Yeah, I can't hear because
precisely
everything's
because
going
of
through my
his
headphones
role
right
in
now.
regulating finance. Another
So
thing
you're
I
not gonna be
know
able to even hear it.
Can we just also
Watching
note that
on
I wonder if
TikTok.
Ohio Democrats will rethink putting that abortion ballot measure off of the November election, right? Because this was a candidate, Bernie Moreno, who just openly insulted women in the state of Ohio, and yet, I think we have something happening.
We do have something happening. We are closing in on the top of the hour, Joy. I'm sorry. Just under 10 seconds to a poll closing tonight, a single poll closing tonight. NBC News, as the polls close in Hawaii, NBC News can project that in the presidential race in Hawaii, there is a projected winner, Kamala Harris, projected to be the winner in the presidential race in the state of Hawaii. Right? Yes, there it is. In terms of the road to 270, those 4 electoral votes from Hawaii make the road to 270 look like this. Trump right now standing at 230 electoral votes. Harris standing at 189. Again, the only swing state that has been called thus far by NBC News is North Carolina, which has been called for Trump. Here's a look at the other battleground states. In Georgia, it's too close to call, a difference of under 120,000 votes between them, with 93% of the vote in Georgia. In Pennsylvania, too close to call, 84% of the vote is in, just over 200,000 votes between the two candidates in Pennsylvania. In Michigan, it's too close to call, 44% of the vote in, difference of about 100,000 votes between them. In Wisconsin, it is too close to call. We've got 3/4 of the vote in, just under 90,000 votes between the two candidates. And in Arizona, it's not too close to call. It is too early to call. You see just over half the vote in. Also in Nevada, it is too early to call. We've got 2% of the vote in Nevada. All right, let's let's look at where the Senate stands right now, actually. Forgive me. In the Senate race in Hawaii, where polls just closed at midnight Eastern time, NBC News projects the Senate race in Hawaii at this point as too early to call. This is Democratic incumbent Mazie Hirono. Sorry for my confusion there for a moment. I thought we were going right to this slide. This is where the Senate stands at this hour. There are still 10 uncalled Senate seats, which is a lot. Republicans have a net gain of 2 already. That's in Ohio, Sherrod Brown's seat. They flipped to Bernie Moreno, and that is in West Virginia, where Jim Justice picked up the seat that was previously held by independent Joe Manchin. Steve, what are we seeing at this hour?
Okay, let's take a look at Pennsylvania, where you had Jacob there a few minutes ago setting up what probably any minute now we're going to see out of Philadelphia, and that is, he says, about 50,000
See what
vote
happened,
by
y'all.
mails. The result's going to be released in Philadelphia. Of course, that is the most Democratic-friendly, overwhelmingly Democratic vote. So when that gets reported, we want to see what it does. This margin for Harris right now in Philadelphia sits at 305,000. Remember, ultimately, Democrats are hoping tonight to get that in the neighborhood of 500,000 votes. Got a long way to go with a little bit more than 2/3 of the vote in. And again, the context for this is where things stand in Philadelphia right now is that Trump is running so far 4 points above where he finished in 2020. Again, let's see. This mail update is going to be huge because how much do these numbers change? Democrats want to be above and need to be above this Biden level and be getting that plurality close to 500,000 because of what else we're seeing right now and what's coming even in the last few minutes in Pennsylvania, and let me just show you what that is. A couple things. We said put a pin in Luzerne County, where Wilkes-Barre is, where Hazleton is. That's a majority, almost 70% Hispanic city. We now have all the vote in Luzerne County. Donald Trump is going to win this by a little bit more than 21 points. Compare this to 4 years ago, it was 14. Theme, but it's important. Trump's gains with Hispanic voters. You're absolutely seeing it here in Luzerne County. He's going to win this by more than 20 votes. That's a significant jump for him. His campaign said he was going to do that. They did do that here. We also saw him make those gains in Lackawanna County right next door earlier tonight. Also, where we're getting some clarity in Pennsylvania, south central Pennsylvania, Lancaster County. This is one of the counties where you can see in 2020, Trump got 57-41. It's 57-58 if you round it 41 now. This is a place where Trump slipped in 2020, where Democrats wanted him to slip further. That's not happening. This is a big region population-wise. It doesn't get the same attention as Philadelphia. Lebanon County here, too. All the vote is in. Again, Democrats wanted more of a Trump drop-off here. They don't get it in Lebanon County tonight. And we showed you Cumberland County, I believe, earlier, but also in this region, also a place Democrats wanted gains, also a place where really they're not getting it tonight. Look inside the collar counties here, just outside Philadelphia. These are huge population-dense counties, and I'll flag a couple things. We got almost all the vote in Delaware County right now. Of these core collar counties, this is the most Democratic. It's the most diverse, most blue-collar of these these three, of Delaware, of Chester, of Montgomery. Now, in 2020, Joe Biden won here by essentially 27 points. Getting close to all the vote in here right now, and it sits at about 24.5. Harris not at the Biden level. And keep in mind, again, this is very clear in Pennsylvania right now. Generally in these counties, the vote by mail is all reported out early, and what remains is this same-day vote that's Republican leaning. So in all these counties, you just see Trump incrementally improving with each update, and Harris is now almost 2 points under where Joe Biden got in this core Democratic county 4 years ago. Next door in Chester County, now this is more significant drop-off for Harris from Biden, but Chester County, unlike just about every other county in Pennsylvania, they are waiting until the end of the night, they say, to release their vote by mail. So let's see when the vote by mail comes in Chester County, if Harris can get back and surpass that 58, but there is also same-day vote coming in that is helping Trump here. Next door in Montgomery County, this is just an enormous suburban county. And again, we've got the vote by mail. We're waiting on the same day, and already Harris is now running a point behind where Joe Biden finished in this county in 2020. Go up to Bucks. Bucks here, it's a little bit different. It's more blue-collar, certainly, than Chester and Montgomery. It's more of a swing county. And again now, about half the vote is in here. Biden won this by 4.5 points in 2020. Trump has now taken the lead in Bucks County. It's tiny, but he's taken the lead. And again, this theme in counties like Bucks County and these more blue-collar counties throughout the northern tier of the battleground, you're seeing it. This was such a close race in 2016. Democrats made a significant jump here in 2020, and Trump is sort of rolling back the clock to 2016. So far, you're seeing that in Bucks County as well. We also said in Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, and those inner suburbs, huge Democratic area, we're coming close to all the vote in, 94%. We are super close right now. And again, let me just show you. In 2020, Biden essentially got 60%. And your Harris is very close to that, but she's not quite at that level. And Democrats won her over 60% here. Given everything I'm showing you about these Trump gains, especially in these counties with significant Hispanic populations, it becomes essential for Democrats that Harris in these areas overperform where Joe Biden did in 2020. Now, there may be some vote by mail ballots left, we're told, in Allegheny County, but we're talking about maybe 1,000, something like that. Very small amount, nothing on the order of what you've got there in Philadelphia. So again, this is a place where Democrats want big gains, and frankly, the way this is playing out tonight, need big gains, given everything else I just showed you. Reset it, 85% of the vote now in Pennsylvania, about 170,000 vote difference. Seeing, in case it came in there, it did. There you go. That vote by mail update, it looks like, came in Philadelphia as we were going through this, and you can see, look at that Harris margin, how much that jumped. basically up to 350,000. And there is, as Jacob said, another batch of mail that's going to be reported out tomorrow morning. So another jump like this expected to come that did knock Trump's number down, that did knock his percentage down to 20.8. It was at about 22 before, but again, he is still running 3 points north of where he was in Philadelphia back in 2020. So let's see that final. It's going to be a while till that final vote by mail update. But this one took Trump down a notch, but it didn't take him back to the level Democrats want him at there. And we can just take a trip down quickly to Georgia because we've got some more counties that have basically filled in Georgia now, 93% of the vote. And you do see that margin for Trump has come down a little bit. It's just under 120,000 votes, his lead statewide. Not a lot of votes left here, but one place we finally got clarity in here is Gwinnett County. This is a giant one, more than 1 million people in that core Atlanta metro area. Not all, but almost all the votes here right now. And again, let me just show you. It was 18 points for Joe Biden in 2020. Right now, about 16.5 for Harris. This has been the trajectory. Clinton won this thing by only about 6. Margin exploded for Democrats in 20, and they wanted it to take that next step forward in 2024, again, to offset what has been one of the stories tonight. We don't really show it because these counties are all so individually small, but I could just take you through dozens of counties that you see in red here where it's a Trump gain of 2 points, of 3 points, of 2 points, of 3 points, and you add those all together and put them together. That's a big reason why Trump has amassed this lead statewide. We've also got a little bit more in now out of DeKalb County. You know, some of this county here is inside the perimeter, large black population, large population of college-educated white voters. Not quite, Harris, hitting that number that Biden hit here in 2020. Massive win for here, but not quite hitting it. Still some votes to come, though. Democrats want to get more, desperately need more out of there. They would desperately need more out of, this is this is as core Democratic a county as you get. And again, Harris basically level, but a tick under where Joe Biden was in 2020. Not much to come. Democrats need every vote they could possibly get out of there. So again, you reset it statewide, seeing if anything changed. 118,000 votes. That's the Trump margin right now. And I'll just check to see if anything changed dramatically in Pennsylvania. 166,000, 85%. And you see what the lay of the land looks like there right now.
Steve, thank you. We'll be checking back in with you. We've been periodically updating you over the course of the night about a few House races that we have been watching. This is a notable House race just because it's a flip, and there have been very few seats that have flipped from one party to the other tonight, but that has happened in New York 22. There was a whole passel of Republicans who were elected in more or less blue districts in New York in 2022. One of them was Republican Brandon Williams. Well, in New York 22, Brandon Williams has just lost his seat tonight. Democrat John Mannion, who's a state senator in New York, will be taking that seat in Congress from that New York congressional district. Interesting result there. The only other flip that I know about at this point, it's a gain, is in Alabama's 2nd district, which is a gain for the Democrats. This is essentially because of redistricting. Shamari Figures there defeating Alabama Republican Caroline Dodson. So this is a race that is in a district that was created because of a big redistricting fight that went all the way up through the very top of the court system. And Shamari Figures will be joining the Alabama congressional delegation from that 2nd congressional district there. One other race to update you on, and this is a ballot measure in Missouri. And this is interesting. Missouri called very early on for Donald Trump today, and Missouri's Republican incumbent U.S. Senator will also be returning to the U.S. Senate, Josh Hawley. But on that same ballot, Missouri voters voted to increase the minimum wage and have paid sick time. And it looks like this is winning by a significant margin. Look at this, more than 80% of the vote in, 59-41 in favor of raising the minimum wage. Again, a phenomenon that we're seeing in lots of different races in lots of different states over the course of tonight about people picking politicians who are absolutely opposed to the policy position that they are then voting for in a ballot measure.
Well, which tells us something important about policy, right?
Yeah.
That maybe this was never about policy. Maybe it's about cultural alienation from the pro-democracy coalition. I mean, I don't even know if you can call it the Democratic Party. Vice President Kamala Harris ran alongside Liz Cheney, and a whole bunch of people, large numbers of Latino men, mostly men, but women also felt no magnetic pull toward that coalition. And I think there's a lot to learn. I just read some comments Chuck Todd made that are similar to comments you made and that Ari's made. I mean, there is a story about realignment, and of course the ultimate outcome is not known. But what we're learning about how people voted, they did not vote in along sort of even traditional party lines. I mean, your point earlier about black voters, but there are policies that you're talking about that didn't make a difference in terms of how people voted. And then there are policies that mattered very much to how people voted, but just not at the top of the ticket. So there's a whole lot of information that we're going to be digesting in the coming days.
We can see that impact right now, and I don't want to get too wonky on you, but right now the bond market, the 30-year bond market is absolutely getting decimated, and here's why. To your point earlier, inflation, people don't like the cost of things. We're going to vote for the business guy. The reason the bond market is getting crushed right now is because people are anticipating corporate tax cuts, which are going to balloon our deficit. Yes. They're also saying, well, if Donald Trump imposes tariffs, it will reignite inflation. So this whole thing is we're voting for someone based on a personality.
Let's go and see what Roland Martin them doing over there.
Family's been in this country for centuries. The idea of voting on one issue because it's a moral or it's about morality, I'm like, but what are you saying about my family? That we weren't moral, that we were immoral, amoral, and that we weren't voting based upon survival? And so what I'm also seeing is different lenses of Americans who are coming into this melting pot who fully don't understand the backbone of whiteness and its inherent value in this country, the premium value, that someone is assumed smarter than what their mediocre self actually is because they're white, because there is a intellectualism in whiteness, right? And it is...
Again, with all due respect, I guess whenever I disagree with y'all, I got to say with all due respect. We were never a melting pot.
I agree with you. That was the story.
But
that was the wolf
their
ticket.
story.
That was the wolf ticket that was sold.
That was a story that was supposed to mollify us so that we would believe that the American nightmare, according to Malcolm, not the American dream, but the American nightmare might work for us. But if we look at our foremothers and fathers, we knew better. We had to know better.
I like this story that they're talking about.
But that's what I'm saying.
But we as black people, there's just a bunch of stuff we should not buy into. We should not buy into the notion of a melting pot because we never melted, and we're not gonna melt. We shouldn't buy into those. Oh, immigration was so bad for them. Bull. I mean, what we know is that there would be no America were it not for black labor. What we know is there would be no White House were it not for black labor. There would be nothing were it not for black labor. There would not be a thriving South without black labor. And so we don't need to continue to repeat their tropes. We need to rewrite the story.
But for those of us who've been in this country for centuries, we don't believe it. We reject that very premise. We understand the fallacy and the fiction that whiteness is. But those who are new to this country, who think that somehow if they show up and support someone who is a fascist, they think that there's something that they can attach themselves to. They think that they can buy into the American dream and punch the ticket of whiteness. And they don't understand that will never happen for them.
But Michael, here's the deal. I look at coalitions. Mm-hmm. And again, I look at 2008.
Love Roland Martin.
I won't call that melting pot, but I look at the coalition that was actually put together. And the backlash of that was the basis of my book, White Fear. And if you look, you just step back and realize that was a multiracial coalition.
Right. Yes, Obama coalition.
Obama wins Macomb County in Michigan. Those same voters abandoned Hillary Clinton in 2016. So you look at how they vote. And you have to then ask, okay, well, what happened there? What went on? Well, first of all, he's also coming after George W. Bush. The economy tanked under George W. Bush. He's running against McCain. All that sort of plays into it. But Obama's mere election, I'm not going to forget the poll that was taken, and it was right before he got inaugurated. The question was, are you optimistic about the future of America for your children? Everybody except white people, majority said yes. And I'm like, y'all, hello, we better pay attention to this. On CNN and the rest of the places, nobody want to talk about that. I'm like, it's there. 2016 comes. September 2016, the question was asked, are you optimistic about the future of America economically for the next 10 years? Black people, least money, highest optimism.
Right.
Latinos, second least money, highest optimism. White America, most money, least optimism. And so we cannot deny that what you're seeing is this idea that our nation is slipping away from us.
Right. Exactly.
And so now, when you have somebody who makes this, economic argument, and we have to acknowledge that that is appealing to some black folks, as if that stimmy check, still is in your pocket. When you start looking at, again, Latinos in this country who are assimilating.
Yes.
That's
and when you assimilate in America, you ain't assimilating to black. No. You are assimilating away from whatever the hell you came from, and that is white.
Yep.
And so now, when you look at this here, and then when you also lay in, they spent $120 million on transgender ads.
Right.
That was specifically targeting white male voters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're turning them out. And so to study this, you got to actually look at exactly what happened.
Can I talk about
and
that?
hold on one second. And what you're finding, Michael, is very simple. You're finding that Republican Party is playing a culture war.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So a few things here, and then I know Nola wants to jump in. Okay, so I live in Detroit, and I've seen the bombardment of these transgender ads and them using clips from Vice President Kamala Harris from a few years ago talking about providing transgender surgery for people in prison, and also using clips from Charlamagne the Guy from the Breakfast Club. And I kept saying she needs, and I fully support Vice President Kamala Harris, but they didn't have ads that put the truth out, because that was the law under the Trump administration, okay? Number one, that was the law under the Trump administration when you do the research. When she was just interviewed a few days ago on the Breakfast Club, and she put the correct information out there.
But let me give you insight what happened there.
Yeah.
So they were in a conundrum. How do you address that?
Right.
The Lincoln Project said, we'll handle it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put an ad out and do it.
I didn't see one.
Because their ad was 2 weeks late.
Right.
And so, again, that was one of those things, well, do I touch it? We don't.
This is such a great conversation, guys. That's why I love watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Such great news. I'm just sharing. We're having a watch party. So, hope you guys are enjoying it. But, it's getting late. And I don't think we're going to get an actual winner today. Let's go back to MSNBC and see what they're doing over there.
Democracy is actually the number one thing and so there was a tremendous concern about what might happen to us if we are no longer a democracy. That was also more of a drive, at least if you believe the exit polls, than the economy, and yet it wasn't necessarily enough to not make it a tie, right? So
let's turn to Alex Wagner, who's standing by with our political insiders. Alex.
We are here in the insiders room. Simone, we were talking a little bit about Philadelphia County, Pennsylvania, what you're hearing on the ground over there, expectations being set. Do you have anything you want to share with us?
Well, I first want to say that, Claire McCaskill, I've sat next to her at tables with her over the last couple months of this election cycle, and everything that Claire has said, even when I'm like, Claire, that's no. It hit, in this cycle has come to fruition. So I was fighting Claire McCaskill about 2 hours ago, but what I am hearing, again, as Steve Kornacki just told us at the big board, there were a number of votes, absentee ballots, that came in this latest batch. Lots from Philadelphia County. The lead that needs to be insurmounted is not the gap may not be insurmountable, but it may be mountable. But they're cautiously optimistic. Now, there's still additional absentee ballots out there. I don't know if there, I don't know exactly how many are left out, but I can tell you, I personally don't think that there are enough. And that means if there were not enough, I want to be honest with people, if there are not enough absentee ballots out there to make up the gap that currently exists for the Harris-Walz campaign, the vice president will not win Pennsylvania. And if she does not win Pennsylvania, Donald Trump then hits 270. Now, Pennsylvania people are set. Allegheny County, that's Pittsburgh, right? The Lehigh Valley, with the Puerto Rican vote, there is still a chance. And then some of these suburbs in the collar counties outside of Philadelphia. But the numbers, the margins, because this is an election about the margins. Yeah. The margins have not been large enough in the state thus far. But again, there's still some votes out there. It's not over till
we are still in it. We've been talking, Claire, about Michigan and Wisconsin, and looking at those two states in the context of the Senate races that are happening there. And as a former senator yourself, I wonder how you look at the way in which Alyssa Slotkin is in a very, very tight race with Mike Rogers, and Tammy Baldwin is in now, I believe, slightly, maybe even behind her Republican challenger.
Yeah, and of course, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. Yeah. What started out as a hopeful sense that maybe we could knock off Ted Cruz and maybe the independent candidate in Nebraska, while not caucusing with Democrats, would deny the Republicans a seat. Now we're looking at whether or not I think the Republicans end up with 51, 52, 53, or 54 seats. And why is that so important? Well, one reason it's so important is because it probably means if this all happens, this is very depressing. I'm sorry to do this to everyone, but it means maybe the worst instincts of Donald Trump as to who he would appoint to the cabinet can become real. Because there wouldn't be enough people that would say, no, you're not putting somebody who's been in prison in charge of the National Security Council. This is not a good idea. So that worries me. Now, the other thing about the Senate races that I think we need to take a moment and talk about is now the House becomes very important. Yeah. And these House races that, frankly, some of them are in California, so we haven't had a chance to do deep dives yet. Kornacki has not really educated us yet fully on all of these House races that are out there. But we flipped some already. And Hakeem Jeffries may be the most important person in Washington for the values we care about.
Yeah, when you're looking at a landscape, Michael Steele, in which Donald Trump does get the White House and they have 52, 53, 54 seats in the Senate, all eyes then go to the House of Representatives. I wonder, first of all, we are all on an emotional roller coaster, right? We're all calibrating our sort of psychological profiles by the hour. I wonder how you're sort of looking at the state of play and what you're thinking on, focused on.
Well, look, the thing about that strikes me about where we are right now is, in many respects, you kind of saw it coming a little bit. I mean, when you're pulling at the threads of trying to move the narrative around the idea of women's reproductive health, and there's resistance to that. When you're talking about our role in the world, and there's resistance to that. And I think what we're seeing playing out is that resistance to those narratives. I think what we're going to spend time with, if this plays out the way it seems that Donald Trump wins this election, is trying to understand what that resistance was about. What is it about our supporting Ukraine that you did not like beyond the talking points? What is it about women's reproductive health that did not move you enough in Florida?
Yeah.
Right? To actually draw the line in the sand.
Although,
But
can I just say, 50, these numbers, again, this is a quickly moving storm front, but I believe it was 57% of Florida voters voted for.
But you knew what the threshold was.
60.
You knew.
But and 56 or 57% also voted for Donald Trump, which gets to the phenomenon of people voting for Trump and for abortion
There
rights.
you go. There you go.
But you see, I don't think it's as black as white. Like,
no, I'm not saying it's black and white. I'm saying it's absolutely every color under the rainbow. It is every shade of how we start to parse and understand elections like this, because it's going to be important for what happens next. If the MAGA movement continues to expand, as it seemingly has, I mean, there's some real consideration about whether or not Trump hits the national popular vote here tonight. There's some things for us to sort of think about. So, for me, I'm looking at some of the states, and I'm with my friend Simone. Claire is a savant in many respects, but is born out of an experience of understanding how elections kind of drive and how they're built.
Margins.
And how they're built.
And, I wish I could ignore the margins, but it's hard.
Exactly. How elections are built. And I think that this is for a lot of folks, myself included, a recalibration of thinking about, and it really draws me back to one thing, that 2016, focus group where I saw a young mother. I tell a story of a young white female suburban mother of two, divorced. When asked why she was supporting Trump, said he's just like me. And in many respects, as we sit here tonight, that question, that understanding has not been met. To understand how, in the face of Dobbs, in the face of everything else that's happened, white suburban women tonight
still voting for Donald Trump.
Are still voting in a bigger number than you would think for Donald Trump.
Well, I just will say, and yeah, I would love to hear what you have to say on this, Simone. I wonder how much it's voters consciously saying, I'm voting yes on this, no on this, yes on this, and not more just a kind of feeling about Donald Trump and his strength and the fear-mongering he's done around immigration and the fuzziness he's had on women's rights. And, I'm not entirely sure it is a sort of list of kind of policy pros and cons that they're going in there.
I think it's mostly emotional.
I think you have to understand the voters. I just think about Governor Phil Murphy, who, after New Jersey was very, very close in that, 2020 race? What was that? It was 2020. He commissioned these focus groups afterwards. The governor's race was close. He commissioned these focus groups and his own internal focus groups, and what he saw in the focus groups of these voters that went out and did things that Democrats in New Jersey were like, well, wait, what is happening here? He said that we have to listen to what the voters are saying. And so I want to know what the voters have to say about this, and we will have to ask them more questions about their vote in the focus groups in the weeks and days to come. And again, the election is still not over. Okay, it's not over until all the votes are counted. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is many things are happening tonight. In this election in 1968, it was the same election where Shirley Chisholm was elected as the first black woman to the U.S. House of Representatives. In that same election, Richard Nixon was elected as president. Right. And so I fundamentally believe that the legacies of both of those individuals were on the ballot in this election. And Lisa Blunt Rochester and Angela Alsobrooks now join the ranks of black women who have been elected to the United States Senate. Shamari Figures in Alabama, a district that was created because people in Alabama, with the help of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU, and so many others, went all the way up to the Supreme Court to fight for their voting rights, their right to be represented, to have their voices heard, got districts created in Alabama, in Louisiana, and now and they're called Black Opportunity Districts, majority black districts, and now there's more representation. These are the seats that are going to make Hakeem Jeffries the first black Speaker of the House. So there are many things that are happening tonight, and I
Everything,
think that
everywhere, all at once.
everything, everywhere, all at once.
With that,
And all over your head at the same time.
I send it back to you, Rachel.
Joining us now from a tabulation center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, is NBC's own Shaquille Brewster. Shaquille, it is great to see you tonight. What have you been seeing? What are you seeing now?
Good to see you as well. Let me just set up where I am, because we are in downtown Milwaukee, and how Wisconsin counts the ballots, especially in these bigger cities like Milwaukee, is when you look at the early vote and when you look at the mail-in vote, they essentially all go to one location and they're counted, and then those results are posted all at once. And we just heard from the clerk that they are still working through these ballots, but we're likely not going to see the results from Milwaukee until the overnight hours. And you can see a little bit of the process. Just look at how wide open this entire room is. And we just got an update saying that clerks are working through some of the larger wards right now. So far, they processed about 80,000 ballots today. You see some of that processing going on right now as we speak. Once those ballots are processed, then they go into the tabulators, and then that's when they are finally tabulated and sent over to the county. Now, this is all important because there are about 107,000 ballots in this room alone for the state of Wisconsin. And when you talk to Republicans in this state, they are getting more and more optimistic. I'll tell you, they are very chatty right now, reaching out to us saying that, one, they don't think that Vice President Kamala Harris got enough vote out of Dane County. That's in Madison, big college area. But two, we know that Milwaukee is usually the last to post its results. And when you look at the margin right now in Wisconsin, with Donald Trump currently ahead with about 100,000 votes, if I'm telling you there's only about 107,000 ballots here that will be posted later tonight, Republicans are pointing to that and saying that they are very skeptical that the vice president will be able to make up that total. So the votes are still being counted. There are other places where votes are outstanding right now, but it's because of what you're seeing here, the fact that we're waiting on a lot of these ballots to come, that Republicans in the state are saying they're very optimistic, guys.
Shaq Brewster for us in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We'll be coming back to you, Shaq. And Parks has some follow-up questions, but I have to interrupt my own train of thought to bring you a call. For the second time this evening, NBC News is able to make a projection in a battleground state. NBC News now projects that in the battleground state of Georgia in the presidential race, Donald Trump has prevailed in the presidential race in Georgia. So again, of our swing states, we've got two called thus far in Georgia and in North Carolina per NBC News. That puts the electoral map at Donald Trump with 246 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris at 189 electoral votes. Again, both candidates aiming at 270. Of the of the 7 states that we consider to be battleground states, 2, North Carolina and Georgia, have been called by NBC News as of this hour. Both of them called for Donald Trump. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, and Rachel, what we can say now with that Georgia call is if Kamala Harris doesn't win a state that's not been treated as a battleground state, if she doesn't do that, then she now absolutely must pull out a win in Pennsylvania, because if there's no surprises outside the battleground, then Georgia plus North Carolina plus Pennsylvania would get Donald Trump to 270 electoral votes and the presidency. And look at Pennsylvania. We are closing in on 90% of the vote here. Donald Trump is leading by 168,000 votes right now. A couple of things that we can show you that have come in now in Pennsylvania to add a little more clarity. We said at the start of the night, 2 counties are pure bellwethers in Pennsylvania. Voted for Trump in 16, flipped to Biden in 20. What would they do tonight? We told you that Northampton County in the east has flipped to Donald Trump. The other one, Erie County, we've now got the results from Erie County. It's flipped back to Donald Trump. Again, just take a look at this. In 2016, when Trump won Pennsylvania, he won Erie County. He gave it back to Biden when Biden won the state. Now Trump is reclaiming Erie County tonight. Again, this is one of those big sort of quintessentially, you'd call it Rust Belt counties, a lot of big blue collar population there. Where are we waiting for remaining vote in Pennsylvania right now then? We've talked a lot about Philadelphia. Jacob has told us there are going to be a big batch of mail-in votes that we are not going to know until sometime tomorrow morning. That's it. There's also some same-day vote that's been coming in. The same-day vote has been running less Democratic than the vote by mail. And again, the big picture in Philadelphia is the Democrats are currently 3 points behind where Joe Biden ran in 2020. And this reflected a bit of a disappointment for Democrats. They won Pennsylvania, obviously, in 20. They were thrilled with that. But their Philadelphia number came down. It's coming down further so far. And unless those remaining mail-in ballots really boost them dramatically, Trump may finish with more than 20% in Philadelphia. Also still to come, we've got a few votes left in Delaware County, big suburban county, right outside Philadelphia. But again, right now, Harris is not hitting that Biden number. She absolutely needs to hit and exceed that in these places. Chester County, I think we're pretty much down to the vote by mail in Chester County. Of course, that is the very Democratic vote. So the question becomes, when we get that vote by mail, Harris is at 54.5. She's got to get past, she's really got to move past that Biden number. Will the remaining vote by mail in Chester County do that for her? Up to Montgomery County, more than 3/4 of the vote in here. This is a giant county, though. There are still lots of votes left to come. Again, from Harris's standpoint, she's got to get past that Biden number with what's left to come here. No vote by mail left in Montgomery County. Move up to Bucks County. 2/3 is in right here. This would be, if Donald Trump hangs on here, still plenty of votes to come, though, this would be a flip. And again, of those immediate Philadelphia area counties, this one a little bit more blue collar than the ones I just showed you. So again, that's a trend we're seeing. We saw it in Erie. We saw it in Northampton. We're seeing that in a lot of places tonight. Also, I'm giving you Democratic, big sort of Democratic vote areas, Bucks notwithstanding, but Chester, Montgomery, and Delaware. In southwest Pennsylvania, the two big counties here, we've got Washington all in. I want to draw your attention to this because these are two big bedroom community suburbs of Pittsburgh. In Washington County, Donald Trump has improved tonight. The core Republican area, he wanted to boost his numbers in a place like this. You can see in Washington, he has. And if you go next door to Westmoreland County, which is even bigger, there is still vote to come in Westmoreland County. Trump currently, take a look at this, 28 points was his margin, 36 here right now. Again, if he finishes above that 28, it's exactly what he wanted to be doing. So for Democrats, it's going to take something really kind of massive out of Philadelphia, where really those numbers are disappointing for them so far. And again, out of Chester with that vote by mail, it's more to come in Montgomery, and they're going to need to get bigger margins with what's to come. Again, 170,000 votes. That's Trump's advantage here, nearing 90% in Pennsylvania. Just checking on Allegheny. And again, those are the stakes. Trump wins this state. He's probably got this.
Steve Kornacki, thank you very much. We've got a call to make. NBC News can project at this hour, and this is a big one, that the Republican Party will control the United States Senate. Now, what tipped this over is that NBC News is also projecting a couple of Senate races since we last checked in on Senate. Right now in Nebraska, incumbent Republican Deb Fischer is projected to have held off a very stiff challenge from, interestingly, an independent challenger, Dan Osborne, not a Democrat, but an independent. Ran a very close-fought race against incumbent Republican Senator Deb Fischer, but NBC News now projects that Deb Fischer will be returning to the Senate. Shows you a little bit about how things proceeded in this Nebraska Senate race. I should also tell you that earlier than this, in the Utah Senate race, NBC News has also projected a winner in the Utah Senate race. This is the seat that is being left by Mitt Romney, by Utah Senator Mitt Romney. It will be held by the Republicans, by Republican candidate John Curtis. So after John Curtis secured that seat and Deb Fischer secured hers, that puts the Republican control of the Senate on the books, according to NBC News projections. Lawrence, let me just get your reaction to that.
And this is huge because in the event of a Harris presidency, she probably would not be able to get any federal judges confirmed. I mean, any, like not any district court, not any appeals court, not any Supreme Court for an entire 4 years. On the other hand, in a Trump presidency, this means that all of those judges can just sail right through. It could mean that Donald Trump manages to broker the retirement of two Republican Supreme Court justices and replaces them with much younger justices. So the issue now becomes, what about the House of Representatives? What are we going to end up with in the House? If the House, if the Democrats can get control of the House, then they really have control of government. They do not have control of the confirmation process. That's gone. That is already gone. But in terms of what could happen legislatively, the House would be in control of that, meaning they could prevent any of the worst things.
And let me just interject for a moment. We have eyes on Howard University right now. We can tell you that Vice President Harris is not expected to speak tonight, but we are seeing quite a crowd there, and we are expecting, we're within the 2-minute warning from a statement that we're expecting from the Harris campaign co-chair Cedric Richmond. Cedric Richmond expected to address this crowd at Howard momentarily. Again, we don't expect to be hearing from Vice President Harris. But I think, actually, if we can go to this live so we can hear the Natsat here, so we can hear Cedric Richmond and what he's going to say to the crowd and also how the crowd receives him. This is live from Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Good evening, Howard. Good evening, HU. I want to say good evening to all of the Harris campaign, the campaign family. Thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the promise of America. We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the Vice President tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
A short and to-the-point statement from Cedric Richmond, the Harris campaign co-chair, speaking to what is still a considerable crowd at Howard University in Washington, D.C. You now see them turn as one to start to leave the grounds. They're letting the crowd assembled there for the Harris campaign and for in support of Vice President Harris, letting everybody know that she's not going to be speaking on any subject over the course of this evening. Cedric Richmond saying we still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. You will not hear from her tonight, but he did say that you will hear from her tomorrow, I think indicating that she may be speaking from Howard tomorrow, both addressing HU, Howard University, but also addressing the nation, in his words.
I just wanted to sort of re-emphasize a point that Lawrence made before that speech about where we stand tonight. We're looking at a map that appears to show somewhere in the national 3 or 4 point swing from 2020 towards the Republican Party. We have called the Senate for the Republican Party. That they were always favored to take the Senate, given the map, so it's not hugely surprising. There is a weird wrinkle here, which is the House of Representatives. Now, in 2016, of course, when Donald Trump won that race, despite losing the national popular vote, he won the White House, the Senate, and a House majority. He had a trifecta. When Joe Biden won in 2020, he had the Senate and the House a trifecta, thanks to those 2 Georgia runoffs. It is a genuine possibility that should Donald Trump win the presidency, which is not yet called, the Senate is called for Republicans, the Democrats take back the House from Republicans. This is not like crazy talk. This is not like some, it's 1 a.m. and I'm punchy. Like, mathematically, based on what we know so far, based on the flips we have, that is genuinely an outstanding possibility. That could be massively consequential in ways that I cannot overemphasize.
And we're going to have to, as we start to see House races get called and as we watch for additional flips, and ads, we're going to have to talk about those consequences over the course of this night. You're not going to get away with it, with leaving without talking about those consequences. But before we leave Howard University, I want to go actually to MSNBC's Michelle Norris, who's at Howard University for us, who just saw those remarks from Cedric Richmond. We saw the reaction from the crowd from that aerial or that high-mounted shot in terms of people turning and leaving. Cedric Richmond, Michelle, making clear that the vice president will not be speaking tonight. Nobody should be waiting to hear anything from her. But it does sound like, was I Was I right in understanding what Cedric Richmond was saying, that she will be back at Howard tomorrow to make remarks both to Howard and to the nation?
Yes, you heard that right. The crowd, you can probably see behind me the rush to the exits. I mean, as soon as he said that, people turned on their heels and they were out of here. The evening was getting increasingly somber as people realized what this map is looking like. He did indicate that she would be back tomorrow to speak to people here and to speak to the nation. That, of course, is a logistical nightmare on several levels because the university was not expecting her to come back tomorrow. I don't know how large the crowd will be. There are a lot of unknowns in that statement. I do know that there was a lot of hand-wringing and consternation in her camp about when she should leave, about when she should start to head here. And her victory party, which was in another part of town, at what point they turned off the TV set and just piped up the music because the room was starting to get increasingly somber. So a lot of people here, I haven't had a chance to talk to people who expressed disappointment. There really is still a lot of people who are holding on to hope, trying hard to hold on to hope. But the numbers, it's hard to do that in the face of a map that really looks like it's presenting a very steep challenge. And a country that at this point is still very divided.
And to be clear, Michelle, NBC News has called 2 of the 7 swing states. They have called Georgia and North Carolina for Donald Trump. They've also called Senate control for the Republican Party. 5 swing states remain to be called. But as you say, the internal math, which we have been following with Steve Kornacki, the wins in Georgia and North Carolina have created the mood that you're describing. The last thing that we have reportable from the Harris campaign, the top of the Harris campaign manager, Jen O'Malley Dillon, said, we always knew it was going to be down to the blue wall, and the blue wall is still uncalled at this point. But it sounds like the Harris campaign is sort of keeping things tight in terms of whether or not they're going to string people along into thinking this is going to happen.
And in that note that Jen O'Malley Dillon sent out earlier, there was an indication there, if you noted, that came out, a little more than an hour ago. And she was telling people at that point, get some sleep. We'll continue to count these votes, and we'll be back at this in the morning.
Yes, that's right. Michelle Norris, I imagine, are not freeing you to go sleep anytime soon. I imagine we may be back with you yet. But thank you for being there for us. It's much appreciated. Seeing Cedric Richmond come out and make those remarks at Howard, you can see how it could be different, right? You can see how they could expect that to be the candidate. I think they planned for everything in terms of, it's close, or Harris is ahead, but Trump declares victory. I mean, all these things that everybody gamed out. Now, while we're just waiting for the blue wall states to come in and watching the math, sending people home is also like asking people to conserve their emotional energy, I think.
And it's not possible. I mean, I think there's no other way to describe how people are feeling leaving that venue and people on the campaign than deflated in this moment. Yes, all of the other states have not been called. But what they went to that venue tonight hoping to see and witness was a historic election of Kamala Harris to the presidency, was the end of the Trump era as they knew it. And so we don't know the outcome yet, but that is not what they are receiving, and they are being told to go home and wait till tomorrow. It's a hard thing to hear. I just want to say one more thing, and this has also made me think a lot about the campaign team, and I've done a lot of these campaigns, as you all know, and Jen O'Malley Dillon has 3 little kids. She spent years electing Joe Biden. She stayed in the White House to be the deputy chief of staff. Then she went to the campaign and moved there to run this campaign. You have thousands of young people who have worked across the country because they believed in Joe Biden, and then they're like, we're here for Kamala Harris. We believe in this. We're fighting for democracy. We're fighting for abortion rights. All of those people are also sitting deflated and waiting at this moment, and maybe still hopeful too, but I've been thinking a lot about them as well, because it's been quite a 200 days for them as well.
And I think it's important to say that anyone who has experienced or been in the United States for any period of time and experienced this country's history and knows it cannot have believed that it would be easy to elect a woman president, let alone a woman of color. Let's just be clear. And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic flawlessly run campaign. She had Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. You know, I mean, she had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Taylor Swift, she had the Swifties, she had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign in that short period of time. And I think that's still true. And I think that the other piece that I think is really important to say to people, because this is where it gets dicey, is that the fact that we now have to wait for more vote to come in, that is how the process works. There is an absentee ballot that needs to come in and that must be counted because those are also legitimate votes. This is where we get into that point where Donald Trump can do the thing Donald Trump does, which is to say, I like where we are right now. And anything that changes that, because there is still a chance that the absentee ballot, that some, you know, the remaining ballot could change what's happening now. And so we need to be really, I think, vigilant and important in telling people and reminding people that until all the votes are counted and there's an actual call made, we don't have an outcome. And people going home at Howard, you know, my concern would be that it feeds a disinformation, you know, sort of doom loop that could be exploited by those who've been exploiting this campaign. We've had Russia, someone maybe with a Russia, you know, VPN or maybe in Russia calling in death threats. And those death threats were going, let's be clear, to minority, black, and indigenous counties. Bomb threats.
And 2 points on that. One, to reinforce what Joy is saying and what we know, but the truth bears repeating, we are counting all the votes and following the facts. We are not in a race to get the facts. We will follow them, and they will come when they come. We are not in a prediction contest. We're not in a probability contest. We're not in a is your needle right contest. We are going to do that. So that's number one, and we are committed to that. And I wish everyone was committed to that, but we've learned not everyone is. Full stop.
Why are you saying that? You sound like you're defending against something that other people are doing wrong.
I think there are a lot of folks out there that don't care about that, and so either they
don't care about the real result. They want to jump to the. They want to jump to it before we know it. I got you. Okay.
So that full stop. Then there's the journalism of what we're seeing right now in the last 10 minutes, and we are seeing where both campaigns are at, which doesn't mean they know the future, which is why I so laboriously made that point. But we've seen Donald Trump think he might win re-election and sound like that, and he lost. We saw the Hillary Clinton campaign, I say this in the most bipartisan way possible, on election even 16, really think they were going to win. So that's not predictive or dispositive, as the lawyers would say, but I stopped practicing. So it doesn't mean anything, really, but I will say in reporting it, what we just saw from the Harris campaign looks like their expectation is more pessimistic than optimistic. We didn't see them bring out a real fire breather who's acting like, hey, give us a little more time. We got this. It wasn't a long speech. It didn't even, and Jen can speak to this, as can everyone on the panel, it didn't sound like a battle plan of here's the next 36 hours. It sounded more pessimistic. And on the flip side, and I don't mean this as an insult to Donald Trump, although it is a negative observation, the only time he's quiet and talks about things being fair is if he thinks he's already won.
Yes.
When it's uncertain, he accuses everyone of cheating and undermines people's trust in this, which is unfortunate. And when he's losing, he's the loudest. And we all were at this table late night last cycle when we know in the end he lost, and he came out and did that. And so I just want to observe, and I'm sure many other people can add insights to this, that the Harris campaign sounds like that. And he is as quiet as we've seen him.
I think that's exactly what we're all observing, is kind of the vibes that you're seeing from people rush out of a venue that you just saw Cedric Richmond speak at, and not Kamala Harris saying, I'm so proud to be the next president of the United States. I'm sure, well, I would bet, I should say, to be accurate, that they had debates internally, and you referenced this. Should she go out and to speak? Should Tim Walz go out and speak? And there are different choices you make on campaigns. And this is not reflective of what the outcome is necessarily going to be. But in 2004, John Edwards went out and spoke, right?
You know, they sent Edwards out.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
We all thought he was the great next hope. We were a little off in that, but that's fine.
I him from my memory.
I know.
It's like he didn't exist.
I'm returning him back. I'm sorry about that. You know, we saw when Hillary Clinton at the Javits Center, we saw the campaign chair also speak then. It doesn't, you have discussions in the campaign about what message you're sending. So I do think, to your point, Ari, sending Cedric out there, who is not the candidate, not the vice presidential nominee, is trying to be more businesslike, right? Than sending a message that, guys, we don't want to keep you up till 5 in the morning. It's going to happen.
And not
But
the
we don't know
running
what's gonna
mate and
happen,
not
but
the
still.
campaign manager.
Let me interject for a moment. We do have a call. NBC News can project that in the presidential race in New Mexico, there is a winner, and the winner is Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. When the Trump campaign was getting very, very, very cocky about how they were going to do tonight, they started talking about expanding the map, expanding to Virginia, which they lost tonight to Kamala Harris. They talked about expanding the map to New Mexico, where they sent Donald Trump in the closing days. Now NBC News projects they have lost New Mexico to Kamala Harris as well. We shall see. I think the Democrats were hoping they'd do so well they'd expand the map to Texas and Iowa, and they didn't win either of those either. At this point, we've got 2 of the 7 swing states called. They are North Carolina and Georgia, both called per NBC News for Donald Trump. We're still watching the results come in all of the other swing states. We're heading toward a 1 a.m. closing in Alaska. That'll be our last poll closing of the night. Steve, as we're heading toward that, what are you watching?
Yeah, I'm watching Pennsylvania because now we've inched over 90% of the vote in, and Trump's margin now has moved over 200,000 votes in Pennsylvania. That's a 3.5 almost point advantage for Trump. What just happened and what's left? Well, we just got a big piece of the puzzle. York County this is a biggie. Again, we talk about that South Central Pennsylvania region as a sleeper. We just got all of the rest of the vote here. There was a lot outstanding, and again, to put this in perspective, this is an improvement from Trump over where it was 4 years ago, and that completes pretty much the storyline in this region of the state. One of the big questions we asked in Pennsylvania at the start of the night was, would Trump decline further in this part of the state? He had dropped a bit. He had dropped a bit in 2020. He didn't drop any further in counties like this tonight. Lebanon County, Lancaster County, Cumberland County, now York County. Where else did we just get results? We got it in Westmoreland County. We're almost complete here. Again, big Republican suburban, some rural areas too, certainly, but big Republican county outside Pittsburgh. And again, Trump is running a little bit better than he did here in 2020. That's what his campaign wanted to see. We also got some more results out of Montgomery County. We're getting close to everything in there. 86%. Harris is winning in Montgomery County, big suburban county right outside Philadelphia. It's a 22-point margin for her. But what we have been watching is this number, this Harris number, has been ticking down ever so slightly with every update. Why? Because every update is the vote that was cast today. That is the most Republican-friendly vote. The vote by mail, the most Democratic-friendly, that was released early in Montgomery County. So what are we still waiting on in Pennsylvania? Well, again, Philadelphia, we've got about 80% of the vote in here right now. Harris's margin, 356,000. Again, Democrats want to get that somewhere around, need it, somewhere around north of, frankly, 500,000 votes probably. Again, Jacob said, going to be a big vote by mail update in the morning. Get some clarity on that. But Democrats need to boost the number there. We are waiting as well in Chester County on the vote by mail. They do it at the very end there. Oh.
Sorry, Steve. Yep. Didn't mean to cut you off mid-word there. This is our final poll closing of the night. It is 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, and that means we've got our final poll closing, and that is in Alaska. Right now, the projection in the presidential race in Alaska is that it is too early to call between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. In terms of the road to 270, this is where the two candidates stand right now as they both try to get to 270 electoral votes. Shazam! There it is. 246 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 194 electoral votes for Kamala Harris. In terms of the battleground states right now, let's look at battleground states right now. Pennsylvania, too close to call, 92% of the vote in. In Michigan, it is too close to call with just over 60% of the vote in. In Wisconsin, it is too close to call with 114,000 votes between the two candidates, 86% of the vote in. In Arizona, it is not too close to call. It is too early to call. We've got just over half the vote in Arizona. You can see the numbers there. And in Nevada, similarly, it is not too close to call. It is too early to call with 70% of the vote in Nevada. Looking at the Alaska House race, there's no Senate race right now in Alaska, but there is a House race in Alaska that is of interest, and it's one of these races to watch in the country right now in the Alaska House race, where Democratic incumbent Mary Peltola is trying to hold on to that seat, facing Nick Begich from a famous Alaska family. Nick Begich running in this race as a Republican, despite his family's Democratic history in the state. This race is, at this point, too early to call in the House race in Alaska. That is where we stand. Steve, I'll get back to you.
Yep. So again, in Pennsylvania here, it's about 220,000 just to reset. We were just looking at where else could votes be coming in significant numbers. Centre County here, we still have some to come. This is where State College is. Now, Trump leading here right now. I believe vote by mail still to come here. This was a Democratic county for Joe Biden in 2020, so an opportunity for Democrats to add a little bit. Penn State University right there. So there are some pockets that, though, frankly, this should be a Republican county in a big way by the end of the night. We still have a ton of votes to come. We knew it was going to take a long time here. The vote by mail, it looks like, has been processed. So there are pockets here where Trump can gain, too. But again, Philadelphia, by far the biggest thing outstanding. Democrats just trying to squeeze everything they can out of those collar counties, but with 93% in, making up a deficit of 220,000, getting to be a very tall order for Democrats. I wanted to update Wisconsin as well.
Hi, my name is Liv, and I want to welcome you to the So Graceful Sisterhood. This is a community where women can come to embrace their authenticity, reconnect to their feminine energy, and cultivate the life that they truly desire. I know how it feels to be overwhelmed by the demands of life, to feel disconnected from your true self, constantly pushing to meet expectations, while deep down, you know there's more. More grace, more joy, more alignment waiting to be uncovered. That's why I created the So Graceful Sisterhood. This is a space where spiritual women can come together to activate their authenticity, flourish in their feminine energy, and grow in grace while building the life they truly desire. It's not just about practicing self-care. It's about living it every day in everything we do. When you join the So Graceful Sisterhood, you'll have access to guided yoga practices, meditation sessions, and spiritual workshops, all designed to help you reconnect with yourself and grow in ways you never thought possible. But even more than that, you'll be joining a sisterhood of women who support each other, celebrate each other, and grow together. If you're ready to embrace your authenticity, align with your divine feminine energy, and join a sisterhood that supports you at every step of your journey, I invite you to join us in the So Graceful Sisterhood. Your grace-filled, aligned life is waiting for you. Click the link below to become a member today. I can't wait to see you inside.
Suburban, high concentration of college degrees county we've been talking about. And Harris almost gets to the Biden level here. There isn't much of a drop-off for Harris here. And this is this is where Albuquerque is, just giant vote-producing county. Now let's get to a county that's almost 70% Hispanic. Down where Las Cruces is. And you see, again, this is going to be a Harris County tonight. But look at the change. This was almost a 19-point victory for Joe Biden, cut down by 10 points here. Core Democratic county in New Mexico. The counties in New Mexico with the highest Hispanic populations are where Donald Trump has made his gains. The reason he got this down to 5 points are the counties with Hispanic population there. So you're seeing that, outside of the core battleground. And as I said, I've been showing you in Pennsylvania all night. One of the stories to how Donald Trump has gotten this lead tonight has been all of these small and mid-sized cities, counties that have these small and mid-sized cities in them with significant Hispanic populations. That's where Trump's made gains.
Steve, thank you very much. Looking now at what remains outstanding, obviously we've got Senate races that remain outstanding. We've also been talking about control of the House. Now, as far as I understand it right now, the best thing that we can say, most definitive thing we can say about the House is that we're not going to know. And that's because there's so many contested House races that are going to come out, even just in California. And California, very proudly and with no compunction whatsoever, takes weeks to count.
Yeah, they're just like, you'll wait.
You'll wait, and it'll be really important for the country, but we'll get to it when we get to it. And they've done it that way for years in many cycles, and there's no fighting with them about it. Right now, at this hour, I understand that there are roughly 2 Democratic flips, meaning seats that were held by Republicans that are now held by Democrats, and roughly 4 Republican flips, seats that were held by Democrats that will in the future be held by Republicans. And so we'll look at some of those details, and we'll try to keep an eye on, look at all the uncalled races. There's tons of them here. But with a Republican-controlled Senate and with the sort of vibe check that we're getting from the 2 presidential campaigns, control of the House, as you mentioned, Chris, could become one of the most important things in the country.
And, you know, let's go back to control of the Senate for a moment. It's only control of the Senate for 2 years. And in the next 2 years, the Democrats will have the advantage in the Senate campaign that the Republicans had this time, which is to say more Republicans will be defending incumbent seats against Democrat. More Republican seats will be exposed to being flipped. And so it is a 2-year hold by the Republicans as of now. And you know that starting sometime tomorrow, Chuck Schumer is going to be working on how to get that back in 2 years.
There is, you mentioned the judges, which is such an important generational piece of this. But in that 2 years, there's also the confirmation of nominees. And if it's Kamala Harris sitting in the White House, it's going to become extremely difficult to get nominees through.
Let alone judges.
Let alone judges. It's true. It's the flip side. If Trump is in the White House, some of these nominees, and this might be, we don't know where things will be, an interesting thing to watch, might be very easy to get through, or maybe people like, there might be some who feel they're at risk in 2 years, and maybe they'll surprise us. But will have a huge impact. Some of the people that Trump would nominate might get through, even if there should be greater concern.
And there's something you should also remember, David Jolly made this point when he was on with me the other day, is that Vice President Harris's coalition, this broad coalition she built that includes the Liz Cheneys of the world and the Adam Kinzinger, her allies are not in power. They're mostly, you know, members who are now turfed out.
Yeah.
So the actual existing House, the current House majority, is very Trumpy. It's very far right wing.
Led by Mike Johnson, who led the coup.
And so even if you had like a narrow Democratic majority, it would be incumbent upon Hakeem Jeffries. He would have to do what Speaker Pelosi has been able to do, which is to navigate a narrow majority, because it doesn't look like either side, either way, would have a very large majority.
If the Democrats take the House, which again, it's going to be a while, everybody settle in, Jamie Raskin will be the chairman of the Oversight Committee. And there will be people like that who will take on outsized leadership roles and help guide through to be a check on if there's a Trump in the White House with Senate control by Republicans. And that could be an interesting dynamic of this that people are undervaluing at this moment.
I just wanted to add one note of explanation about why California can take as long as it does. They actually don't have all the ballots tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
The ballots can arrive in California, I think, as much as 7 days after Election Day, but for several days after Election Day. So once they get all the ballots in a very, very close House race, then we can start to get to it. But it's not like they're sitting around being slow about it. They literally are waiting for some ballots to arrive later this week.
Yeah, and it's the culture in California. There's no drama about this in California. It's not like people are gnashing their teeth in the state, going, "Why is it taking so long?" Everybody knows that they can still receive ballots 7 days after Election Day and have them counted. Yeah.
Just, I want to say one more point about checks, because there's a sort of saying you've heard for years in the world of sort of the, democratic development about democracy is more than elections. And, the reason I think that's an important statement to think about is it's possible we don't know what the night is going to bring. The Senate, we've called for Republicans. Donald Trump is currently up in Pennsylvania. If he wins Pennsylvania, he would be the next president of the United States. The House, we're not going to know for weeks. But it's possible, that Donald Trump and the Republicans will have a trifecta, as they did in 2016. In which case, the bulwark, against whatever overreach there could be, and whatever those depredations might be, and I think they're going to have a tendency to overreach if they do, is the kind of thing that's democracy between elections, which is the work of civil society, it's the work of the Fourth Estate, it's the work of institutions, it's the work of citizens. All that's super important stuff. We've seen it before. Donald Trump won an election in 2016. He got a Republican House. He got a Republican Senate. They were all fired up, and they were going to repeal Obamacare, and they tried twice, and it didn't work. There was a lot of things they wanted to do, and they didn't work because basically of the other parts of what American democratic culture is. And that was an important and meaningful lesson for the vibrancy of the American democratic experiment, and there's been lots of tests of and threats to that in the intervening years, but those are, no one gets elected those things tonight. We're not going to make a call about those parts of civil society, those institutions, what citizens do. Those things are there on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no matter who gets called where, and in some ways, those are some of the most important attributes of American democracy.
And governors.
Sure.
Is another important part of this. And there are some incredible Democratic governors out there who are overseeing in big important states like California and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Maryland. And they become part of the defense of democracy and the defense of rights. And they take on a big role.
Right? Because if you're talking about policies like mass deportations, if you're living in a red state, you're more exposed in a way than you would be if you're living in a state with a governor who intends to protect you. And so I think, these are the questions. And again, we're not there yet, and we haven't gotten to that yet. But those are the things that people would then have to think about is where, where you live then suddenly becomes very important to what actual rights you have as a citizen.
Let me interject just for a moment. We have a change in a characterization. This is not a projection of a winner, but in Nevada, we had previously had word from NBC News that this race was too early to call. Now in Nevada, in the presidential race, it is too close to call. You see 70% of the Nevada vote in, a difference of just under 40,000 votes between the two candidates. Similarly, in the Nevada Senate race, the previous characterization by NBC News had been in this Senate race that it was too early to call, but now in the Nevada Senate race, this is too close to call. This is Democratic incumbent Senator Jackie Rosen facing Republican challenger Sam Brown. It is too close to call, and boy, is it. Look at that, 70% of the vote in Nevada. The difference between these two candidates, just barely 3,000 votes. Look at that, 483,000 and something versus 480,000 and something. A very close and therefore too close to call race in Nevada in that Senate race. And again, that's crucial not just to the future of Jackie Rosen versus Sam Brown. It's crucial in terms of what the margin's going to be in the Senate, which has all sorts of material consequences for what the Republicans are going to be sort of capable of doing there. Ari, I interrupted you.
Oh, well, we were going around doing this new exercise. We're not there yet, but.
Yeah.
So I thought I'd throw one in.
Okay, good. Hit it.
No, I say it every time, right?
Yeah.
We're not there yet. But we have now NBC's called a Republican Senate. Donald Trump has busted through his past ceiling and is doing very well, better than he ever has before in the national trends. And then we have several races that are too close to call, as Rachel just reminded us. So we're not there yet. But in the event that you would have another Trump term, you then have a very important thing that happens in democracies that builds on what you each were saying, which is, what did you vote for? Did you vote for a different economy? Did you vote for things that were promised to you to fix prices and inflation, for populist agenda? Other things? Were you told that changes to certain international policies would benefit you in your own community? And just as we talked about the reaction to inflation, how many years that takes, and here's some of what people said, democracy and the economy really out front there in people's own estimations today of their biggest issue. And do you find in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, none of those things are being addressed, or none of those real world realities are changing, right? That's why we often see this back and forth with the midterms. So I don't think anyone here is getting ahead of the calls. We've emphasized that, or underestimating what I think looks like a very significant set of outcomes. But if people voted for the economy and other improvements and they don't get them quickly, there's no reason to think that they and others in the country will suddenly be just at peace with the non-delivery of that. The energy that's against Washington and incumbents and some of these things can just shift on to the next incumbents. We have had waves of angst from 15, 16, through the first term, where the Democrats came back in the midterms, through the COVID era, and through the recent era. And so that's another piece here is, did the person you elect deliver on anything they told you would get better in your life?
I'm just advised, can I ask the control room if we have somebody to go to on this? I think you just told me that we do. Thank you very much. We think that Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is on his way to go address his supporters. Trump would be on his way to the Palm Beach Convention Center in Florida. We don't know exactly the plans or exactly the timing for the plans, but that's why we're lucky enough to be able to check in with NBC's own Vaughn Hilliard, who is at Trump's election night headquarters in Florida. Vaughn, what are you seeing?
Hey, Rachel, we're in West Palm Beach. He, it's our understanding, is beginning to make his way from his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach here to West Palm to the convention center, where I am told by a campaign official that he is set to speak soon. They were waiting, the campaign was, for North Carolina and Georgia to be called, and they were hopeful that they would be able to see a trajectory that was beneficial to them in the state of Pennsylvania before Donald Trump were to come and make his remarks. It's not clear whether he intends to declare victory here or not, or signal that the votes are coming in and they feel like they are in a good position. But this, when talking to folks that worked in his first administration White House, former staffers that are here, as well as other political allies, there are folks that are already talking about potential jobs in Washington. They say they don't want to jinx it or get ahead of themselves, but there's a great many staff members that have been working here in Palm Beach that have their eyes on working in a second Trump administration. I talked to Roger Stone, the longtime friend and informal advisor to Donald Trump, who was over at the Mar-a-Lago estate, where Trump was joined by the likes of Elon Musk and UFC's Dana White, as well as others who have really helped lift him up politically in the last months, including individuals like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It was a closer group of family and allies that were at the Mar-a-Lago estate watching these results come in before, now to our understanding, Donald Trump is making his way here. And Roger Stone, I mention him because really he's seen through 60 years of the Republican Party, and this is a moment in which I asked him very directly, you know, again, I understand that we are still counting votes here at this time, but at the least bit, there's a part of the American electorate that has chosen to elevate somebody like Donald Trump potentially back to the White House. And I asked Roger Stone, what did he make of this for the history books of watching, after 9 years of America, become acquainted with Donald Trump, somebody who is so transparently brash and somebody who is so willing to denigrate his perceived enemies. And the way that he phrased it to me was, quote, "How very American. No one argues that he's perfect. No one is perfect, but he's genuine. He's not a construct or handled or managed. We embrace the imperfect. We're Americans." That's Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is on his way now here at a moment, of course, that would potentially, in the days ahead, lead to many conversations about the potential policy impact of what a Trump White House with a Republican Congress could look at. But for now, of course, there are ballots still to be counted in several battleground states before Donald Trump would be able to decisively declare victory. But nonetheless, he plans to take the stage behind me here, just a few miles from his Mar-a-Lago estate, the place that he has all but camped out and over the last 4 years, ever since that January attack, and not attending the inauguration of Joe Biden, moving to Florida in isolation, rising back up to prove his prominence in the Republican Party by helping get MAGA allies of his elected in the 2022 midterms. And Donald Trump here today, about to take the stage at a moment in which he and his team feel like they have politically proved from these early results that he is in a good position here. Guys?
Vaughn, I don't know if you can hear me. I know there's big cheers going up from the crowd there. You had mentioned at the outset of your remarks that they had wanted to see the results in Georgia and North Carolina, and they had wanted to see things going their way in Virginia before he spoke. He did not win Virginia. Do you know anything about the calculus as to have him speaking anyway without another state that they were watching for under their belt?
Right. Apologies for misspeaking on my part. I meant Pennsylvania, where we go back to 4 years ago, of course. It was Steve Bannon that urged Donald Trump to prematurely declare victory. Donald Trump, at 2 a.m. on election night in 2020, he did exactly that. We asked, our colleague Jake Traylor asked Donald Trump earlier today inside of the West Palm Gymnasium where he voted, whether he would potentially acknowledge that it may take several days to count ballots and be willing to acknowledge that he may not be able to declare victory tonight. He did affirmatively say that he understood that we may not know the results at this point in time based off of NBC's, another news organization. We have not called it. But of course, Donald Trump has shown an eagerness to, in 2012, in 2016, in 2018, 2020, in 2022, to declare victories, even when news organizations have declared otherwise. So, of course, we expect now in a matter of minutes here, guys, to hear directly from the former president.
Vaughn Hilliard for us in Florida. Thank you very much, Vaughn. We'll be back with you as the night progresses. As Vaughn was just reporting there, Trump has been watching election returns at his home at Mar-a-Lago, which I used to call a golf club, and then I learned there's no golf there.
Nope.
No, wrong one. He's on his way from there by car to the convention center there in Palm Beach, and we expect him to be addressing that exultant crowd. So we shall see. I mean, presumably he's going to declare victory. We thought he would declare victory even if he was losing badly at this point in the night. So given the way things look, we assume that he's going to declare victory, but we'll have to wait until we see what those remarks are.
Yeah, I mean, Ari made this point before, which I thought was a really smart one, about how he's loudest when thinks he's losing and more quiet when he thinks he's winning, at least in terms of what was coming out of that operation. I mean, Trump has this sort of he could pretend to be magnanimous if he thinks he's winning.
When has he ever done that?
He can briefly pretend to be. He'll talk. You know, he will sometimes talk about things like unity, or they'll try to keep him on unity in a prompter speech for like a few sentences.
Yeah. I'm not expecting a lot of
I'm not expecting that. I'm not expecting that. I'm just preparing people. There are these sort of brief glimmers of when his handlers have sort of puffed him up enough where he does that. He may just, riff about 1980s movies. Well, I mean, you really never know.
Or sharks?
Alex.
I feel like there's an aspect to all of this. It's 1:30, almost 1:30 in the morning here, and some people are going to go to sleep. Not us, of course. But in Western Europe, and in the UK, and in the Middle East, people are waking up to this.
Oh, and they are.
And I'm thinking the people who are going to wake up to Donald Trump's remarks tonight are people like Emmanuel Macron and Vladimir Zelensky and, the people of Poland and people in Gaza and people in Tel Aviv and
I've already gotten texts from Ghana and South Africa.
And I've gotten people from Western Europe who are extraordinarily alarmed and terrified about, as a friend of a friend said, maps being redrawn in Western Europe if Donald Trump is president. I mean, we think about the implications of all of this in terms of domestic politics, but the world is at a hinge point. And, this is very much an election about the global world order. And I think we shouldn't forget, as we are kind of trying to think about how to go to bed and grapple with all of this, there's another side of the world that's waking up to this and is trying to figure out what this may mean, not just for America, but for them.
May I reiterate, there are 2 of the 7 swing states that have been called by NBC News right now, which is Georgia and North Carolina. None of the other 5 states have been called at this point. You can see this is the battleground states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, the so-called blue wall. None of those states called by NBC News. Neither has Nevada nor Arizona. What has been called is Senate control, and of course we can read the campaigns in terms of what they are saying without saying anything yet.
Yeah.
And it's 8:25 a.m. in Kyiv, where people they wake up earlier than that, and they are very worried as they look at where this election stands at this hour.
And you've seen, there was a whole sort of conflagration over whether the Harris campaign would embrace the uncommitted movement, which actually wanted to move in her direction at the convention. And the question was whether they should allow a speaker to happen and whether there should be meetings, whether she should go to Dearborn and try to engage the Arab and Muslim community. You did see one of the co-founders of Uncommitted, actually on Andrea Mitchell's show here on our network, support Vice President Harris in the end. the member, the state senator in Georgia, who was going to be the speaker had they allowed it to happen, also endorsed and supported her. But the irony is you did have Tiffany Trump's husband, who's Lebanese American, and others go in and try to really push Arab and Muslim American voters. Stephen Miller was crowing about it, to try to push Arab and Muslim voters in the state of Michigan to go for Trump. The irony of that, of course, is nobody wanted Donald Trump to be president. Nobody wants Donald Trump to be president more than Bibi Netanyahu, who is backed by a far-right coalition that would like to clear-cut Gaza, that would, would truly like to complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza. And so the consequences, ironically, for those, I mean, Mark Lamont Hill, who's been a staunch supporter of the Palestinian rights movement, came out in favor of Harris as well. And so I think, we don't know that this would be the case, but I think that's one of the interesting questions, is that the outcome for people in Gaza and in Lebanon, if Trump were to become president, would be absolutely devastating. It would be everything Bibi Netanyahu has wanted to do for 30 years, not just in Gaza, but in the West Bank and in Lebanon. And so I think for people who care about that issue and who that was their voting issue, it would be highly ironic if the outcome, it was literally to make it far worse than the Biden administration has made it.
And to Alex's point about the sort of reckoning that's happening, or at least just sort of like thinking through the possibilities, right, that are happening. Obviously, like there's like intelligence apparatuses in all these places. There's briefing apparatuses in all these places. Like there are a lot of conversations happening right now. There are going to be a lot of conversations happening right now, whichever way the night went, and whatever the indications were at this hour. But those conversations are happening in a lot of very different places at an incredibly high level, with enormous stakes at play in both the Middle East and in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's going to happen if this goes the way that if we follow this train of thought, is that intelligence sharing between America and our traditional allies is likely going to end. The whole Five Eyes thing is likely going to end. If you've got America switching sides in the Ukraine-Russia war to instead support Russia, or to become neutral, which would mean in this case to support the aggressor, to support Russia. If you've got ongoing secret communications eaten out of government between the Republican nominee and the person who funded his campaign and led his ground game, right? Both of whom are communicating with the Russian government without reporting that information to the U.S. government. And on top of that, you've got reporting from the New York Times that they're considering, once there is a second Trump administration, if it happens, to stop performing background checks before giving people security clearance, meaning giving classified information to anyone. That's supposedly at the instigation of a Trump campaign official who was born in Moscow, who was unable to get a security clearance in the first Trump term, who has had multiple arrests and is currently under indictment, and who has reportedly been put at the top of a short list to be White House counsel. And he is the one who has proposed getting rid of all background checks for security clearances, which means handing out classified information on the corner. You are not going to have American allies who have been relying on us as the pinnacle intelligence agency in the world since World War II. You are not going to have continued sharing of information with a new administration that has an open line with Vladimir Putin. And that is going to essentially be willing to handle classified information the way the man who was indicted for handling it the way he did at Mar-a-Lago at the top, and with handling security clearances the way they've purportedly described. It's just going to be that's something that'll happen.
So I just saw on the screen that Donald Trump won Tennessee. Turn this light on. Oh boy, Donald Trump has won Tennessee. So that means that most of you that live here with me in Tennessee have voted for Donald Trump. Okay. Wow. All right. Well, we'll see what happens, guys. We're about to sign off in a few minutes. And we'll have to come back to this in the morning. We'll be back online in the morning for more coverage of this election. If there is a winner, we will make a post and post it on our TikTok, and I will give my reaction tomorrow and post it on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. All right.
And who you prefer performatively in that White House. It matters for the stability of our currency. It matters for the stability of our economy. And if our economy cannot survive an unstable White House, well, then everyone will suffer. Everyone who's thinking they're going to get, $1 a gallon gas. Welcome to the world in which the United States is an unstable, unreliable country with whom Western Europe cannot ally. Welcome to the world in which the United States is seen as maybe a threat to global security. And these are the things. It's not that it's any voter's job to think about it.
Yeah.
But somebody's going to think about it.
The last profile, the Vanity Fair James Pogue profile of Steve Bannon that ran, the last profile of him before the election, which ran while he was in prison before he got out. The sort of culminating point of it is that Bannon's dream for the second Trump presidency is to get rid of the dollar.
Yes.
And so, if that's the kind of
crypto, just crypto.
But that the dollar should no longer be the world's reserve currency, and that in fact maybe the dollar itself is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And so, if that's what we're going to be entertaining, then exactly what you're talking about is exactly where we're
I'm
at.
open to eliminating the penny. But that's as far as we want to
trying
go.
to get rid of that forever.
Daylight savings. Let's go.
Well, and you have, multiple Senate seats, at least one that we've called, actually being purchased, in a sense, just straight out by people who are crypto multimillionaire. That class of sort of U.S. oligarch is actually not anymore just funding the candidates they want. They're just going to be the candidates they want. And so you're now seeing the U.S. go in a position so much more like the oligarchy that it started out as, that it does make you wonder sort of what does that look like if the U.S. goes very far in the direction of a Hungary? What does it look like? Because Hungary is a small economy. Russia is a tiny economy. I think it's smaller than Texas' economy. We're the United States. If our structure, our political structure, our social structure, and our economic structure is more like Hungary, Katie bar the door on what that does to the global economic outlook.
Let's go back to Steve Kornacki, who is looking at ongoing returns in Pennsylvania. Steve, are we at 94% in Pennsylvania? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yes, we are. It's 94%. Trump's lead here at 190,000 votes. That works out to about a 3 percentage point lead. It is a very significant hill for Kamala Harris to climb here. Just in terms of what's left, the picture is really kind of condensing and clarifying. Obviously, the biggest outstanding source of votes is right here in Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia. You see with 83% there, it's a lead there of about 58 points for Harris. I'm just glancing over to get the number. We expect there are still 137,000 or so votes to come out of Philadelphia. Remember, a chunk of them are going to be that vote by mail that's going to come out sometime tomorrow morning. The wild card in Philadelphia, and what's I think has kept folks at bay a little bit here, is provisional ballots. There's a big number of provisional ballots, and these are expected to break decisively to the Democrats. How many? Well, in 2020, the COVID year, things were it had been a one-off, but there were about 100,000 provisional ballots. In the 2022 midterm, this is in Philadelphia, in the 2022 midterm, about 45,000. And so the question is, how many of them are there? And what does that remaining provisional ballot pool look like when you get the rest of these votes in? Is there plausibly something there that could boost the Democrats enough to make up for this big gap that they have statewide now, which again, I'll show you, 190,000 votes there. So you got what's left in Philadelphia. You got the provisional ballots in Philadelphia. That's what the Democrats are kind of hanging their hopes on, because the rest of these counties here, we're just waiting on a little bit from Chester County. Democrats will gain some here, but at a 54-44 clip, anything like that, it's not going to be a huge gain. Same in Montgomery County. There's some left here, Democratic, but again, if it's about a 60-40 split of what's to come, that won't net out to a ton. And then there are places to come with significant vote where, look, Trump is running ahead in Bucks County now by 2.5 2.5 points. Votes to come there may net out a bit in his benefit. You could look here. This is just the mail-in ballot in an overwhelmingly Republican county. You're talking tens of thousands of votes still to come here in a place Trump won by almost 40 points. So he's going to make up ground there. He's going to make up ground still in a place like Schuylkill County, core Republican county. He's winning it by 52 points. There's still votes to come. There are still pockets of votes as well in these deeply red Trump counties. They add up as well. So again, Democrats stand to make some gains in these places, maybe some very substantial gains out of Philadelphia. The provisional vote, we are trying to figure out how much there is. That looms as a wild card here. But again, looking at a mountain of 191,000 votes you got to make up with this little left in Pennsylvania, that's looking like close to a Mount Everest there for Harris. But let's get a sense of that provisional.
Steve, can we look at Pennsylvania Senate before we leave the state of Pennsylvania?
Yes, let's call it up right there. And again, this is basically the same situation here. It's 49-4-48. So there is a bit of separation there where Dave McCormick, the Republican Senate candidate, is running a bit below Trump's number. Bob Casey, the Democrat, you can see is running a bit above Harris's number. Again, I'll just show you this. Flat. Why that is significant is because while this is a very, as we say, a very big margin for Democrats to try to overcome, and we'll see what happens as we learn more about the provisionals. But while 191,000 is that steep, when you look back at the Senate race, 88,000 with what's remaining in terms of the votes in Philadelphia, in terms of the vote by mail in Philadelphia, in terms of potentially the provisional ballots. That is closer. That's decidedly more doable. Just given the numbers that are left for the Democrats, for Bob Casey to potentially make that up. So there is a bit of separation here. We were wondering about this in a lot of these key Senate races. How much would the sort of the partisan split just roll down to the Senate race? You could see to a great degree it's done that in Pennsylvania, but is this one separated enough for the Democrats where what's left could boost Bob Casey? There's suspense there definitely right now.
Steve, while we are waiting for Donald Trump to speak to his supporters in Palm Beach, I'm going to put you to work a little bit on a couple more Senate races, if you don't mind. You can say no if it's inappropriate, but I'd love to hear your take, either Wisconsin, Michigan, take your pick.
Yeah, let's take a look in Wisconsin because we have more complete results in Wisconsin. Michigan still remains a bit of a mishmash there in terms of these counties we're looking at, but close to 90% of the vote is in here. And again, Hovde, the Republican, with about a 2.5-point advantage. That's about 70,000 votes over Tammy Baldwin, the Democratic incumbent. Again, the question here is how much these are going to sync up with the presidential race. So again, keep your eye on that now. Watch it flip from 50.1 for Hovde to 51.3 for Trump. So again, given how tight Wisconsin may come here, it's a 125,000 vote advantage for Donald Trump. And then you take a look at the Senate race, and it's just a little bit more than half that. So again, Baldwin behind, but running substantially closer to Hovde than in the presidential race we're seeing with Trump and Harris here. So again, if this thing becomes tight enough, if you're in a situation ever where Trump ekes out a victory in the presidential and Hovde's running a point or so behind him, there's the potential there for a split as well. Remember, in Wisconsin in 2020, it was a difference of 20,000 votes that separated Trump and Biden. It was about 20,000 votes in 2016 as well. In 2016, there was a Senate race. The outcomes did sync up that time with Trump and Ron Johnson both winning. But there is separation there. And again, these basic dynamics, I wanted to take a look here. I did want to see Baldwin has gone to 183,000, and I wanted to measure this against. Yeah, okay, they're equal. This is significant because we've talked about it all night, and now officially Harris has expanded the Democratic margin in Dane County. It was about 182,000 last time. So this is yet again this century. Democrats are getting more out of Dane County. That's rolling right over, as you would expect, to the Senate race as well.
Okay, so parallels there. Can we look at Michigan?
Yes. So Michigan, though, 70% of the vote is in here. And again, 52.2, 46. Let's call up the Senate results. 50.7, 46.4. So I think you can see where this one is going. It's a similar story here. It's close to being synced up, but Mike Rogers, the Republican Senate candidate, running a bit behind Trump. What's confusing about Michigan right now is there's still a lot of counties here, big important counties, where we just do not have clarity. A lot of this is done in Michigan. It's a very decentralized process. It's done at the municipal level. So it's just, we get I'll give you an example here. Macomb County, we've got half the vote right now. You go next door to Oakland County, we've got almost all the vote. Democrats are getting about what they want. They probably want a little bit more out of Oakland County than Slotkin is getting right there. But the big wild card here, we talked about it all night. What's Macomb going to do compared to Oakland? Is it going to get close to canceling it out? Half the vote still to come. This is a 13-point margin, essentially, for the Republicans here. That's a substantial improvement from the Republican number in 2020. So we need to see more to be able to make some of these comparisons. Again, only about a third of the vote is in Wayne County. This is obviously hugely important. You've got questions about the city of Detroit, questions about the Muslim and Arab vote throughout the county. So it's a lot of a mishmash in Michigan right now to make sense of either one of the races. But there is, with the votes that are tallied, a little bit of potentially substantial separation between the candidates.
In terms of additional Senate races, if you don't mind, Steve, could we go to Arizona?
Yeah, let's take a look here. And I'm curious, too. In the presidential, okay, now about half the vote statewide. And remember, this is going to kind of, they're going to add the same day vote tonight, and it's going to be a long sort of count in Arizona the rest of the week. So take a look here at the Senate race. And again, you definitely see some separation here. It's a 6-point deficit for Kari Lake there with what's been counted in the Senate race. And it's a 1-point deficit, or a little bit less than a 1-point deficit for Kamala Harris. So we suspected Arizona might be the state where the Republican Senate candidate Kari Lake, who lost the gubernatorial race there 2 years ago, and an extremely controversial figure in Arizona, didn't concede that 2022 gubernatorial loss. So we suspected there might be the most separation there. You're certainly seeing it there. And also, let's move up Nevada. Yeah. Okay, again, now in Nevada, it's similar to Arizona. We've got a ton of vote here, but it's going to be a bit slow getting the rest in here. So what's been counted so far, Trump with a 4-point lead there in the presidential, call up the Senate race. And again, that's, again, like Arizona, it may not be quite as dramatic, but that's a pretty substantial difference between those two candidates. So again, I think that's a very important story. And I'm glad you had me run through these, because I've been so focused on the presidential. But yeah, we see in all those races, to some degree, separation where the Democratic Senate candidate is running better than Kamala Harris, most dramatically in Arizona and in Nevada, but in those other states too.
Steve, can I ask you, again, you can say no, because I know I'm overworking you, but can we talk about some of the uncalled presidential states?
Yeah.
Can we talk about, you had focused in on New Jersey a little while ago. I'd be interested in New Jersey, also in New Hampshire.
Yeah, New Hampshire, now, let's call it up here. Part of the problem in New Hampshire, again, you see all the gray on here. Also, you see all these puzzle pieces. Unlike other states, New Hampshire doesn't report out by county. They report out by municipality. So you've got some cities in here, and you've also got a lot of just small towns, villages, hamlets kind of, where you're just still waiting on numbers. And that last 15% or so in New Hampshire can take a long time, not come in election night, not coming in those overnight hours. So there's still a lot to come, but we can show you some of the places we're looking at. Statewide, that's almost a 5-point lead for Kamala Harris. It's down a little bit from, I'll just show you, that's down a little bit from where this state landed in 2020 when Biden won it by just over 7 points. But some of the places we were looking coming into tonight, this would be a good example. Pelham, New Hampshire, right on the New Hampshire-Massachusetts line. This is the kind of big town that Trump lost ground in I'll show you, lost ground in 2020. He had won it by about 25, fell down to about 20 points in 2020. You see, he has got it back up to that 2016 level in Pelham. There's a number of towns. Here's a big one we're waiting on. This is the kind of thing. Salem, again, right over the Massachusetts line. Again, it's a place where Trump won it by 20 points. This is big by New Hampshire standards, by the way. 20 points, came down to 13 points. Trump needs to get that back over 20 points. So you're looking still there. We could take a look. How about some of these other big ones here? Derry, New Hampshire. Okay, we got complete in Derry. A bit of a blue-collar town here, pretty big-sized blue-collar town. And again, Trump by 14 points in 2016, cut in half in 2020. He's gotten back. Not quite, though, to the 2016 level. I think to really have a shot in New Hampshire, Trump would have to be exceeding the 2016 level. He nearly won New Hampshire in 2016. It was just 3,000 votes. But in a place like Derry, he wants to be going over the 2016 number. Take a look at Londonderry. Very similar here, big, kind of blue-collar place. Look, Trump eked it out in 2020 after winning this thing by 10 points in 2016. Again, he's improved on 2020. The Trump campaign would look at Londonderry and say they want to have more improvement than that. So Trump seems to be taking a step forward. There are some, pretty significantly sized outstanding places on this map still, but he needs to take bigger steps forward. That's why you see it's a 5-point lead here for Harris, about 30,000 votes, 29,471. But with so much to come and such a slow reporting, decentralized state, you're not getting a call there. This was one, though. Obviously, J.D. Vance was sent here on Sunday for the Trump campaign when they talked about potentially expanding the battleground. It was this, it was Virginia, it was New Mexico. It's an improvement, it looks like, for Trump. But you're not looking at these numbers and saying these are numbers that are going to give Trump a victory in New Hampshire.
Last one I'm going to ask you about, Steve, and I'm not even supposed to, but I'm going to. Minnesota.
Yeah, okay, now this is shades of 2016. Let's go out to Minnesota now. 3/4 of the vote is in, uncalled. Of course, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, the Democratic vice presidential candidate, and yet, compare what we're looking at right now in Minnesota to what we saw 4 years ago. 7 points, cut more than in half at this point. It's a 3-point Harris lead. It's a pretty good cushion she has there. But again, this is a drop-off for Democrats in the vice presidential candidate's home state. Oh, and I wanted to extend it out further because, remember, in 2016, this was one of the states that Trump almost got. He got, remember, Pennsylvania he flipped, Michigan he flipped, Wisconsin he flipped on the strength of blue-collar white voters. Minnesota is a state that also has a ton of blue-collar white voters, a lot of them small cities, rural areas. And again, this number tonight is not looking as much like 2020 as it is 2016. Again, what saves Democrats, even in a close call like this in Minnesota, what saves Democrats is the immediate Twin Cities area here. You talk about like Hennepin County. It's the big population dense, suburbs, cities where, again, high concentrations of college degrees. And again, right on the number. Harris is right on the number. She's not dropping off at all in Hennepin County. So look, even if Trump is making gains, is winning back some of the votes that he surrendered in 2020 in blue-collar areas, Democrats count on this area. We take a look here where St. Paul is. Again, right on the number there for Harris. So typically for Democrats, if they can hit those big margins in the Twin Cities, they can withstand defections or losses in the more blue-collar areas. And it looks like Trump has made gains in the blue-collar areas, but so far the reason why he's still trailing with this much vote in is the Twin Cities are doing what Democrats depend on them to do.
Steve Kornacki, that was me putting you through your paces. None of that stuff we had worked out in advance. You did it all off the top of your head. You're quite amazing. We're going to give you a break. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back right on the other side of this. Stay with us.
Push 3, take.
I want our viewers to feel seen and heard. Suddenly they change the rules. I want them to feel like I'm their voice.
Dissolve.
So what they are screaming at their television, why isn't the media talking about this? Why aren't they asking that? The migrant issue. I'm hoping the way we approach the show, the questions we ask, are the same things you are asking your friends and family. But the question on everyone's mind, that's what we're trying to get at. Because we need the answers, and I think our audience does too.
Now we turn to an issue that is upending politics, communication, jobs, artificial intelligence.
We know that there are things about the world that can be made much better with AI.
I've never seen a technology explode in the consciousness of folks. I mean, it has been moving at an astonishingly fast clip.
Hundreds of tech executives are warning AI poses an existential threat to humanity.
All of this is happening while lawmakers have fallen behind on regulating this technology.
I grew up in the front row of the spectator section in courtrooms. My father was a Boston cop who became a lawyer, and he had me in the courtrooms all the time. And I was learning literally the rules of evidence when I was in high school. My first book was about a case that went on for 7 years with appeals to the United States Supreme Court, 2 trials. And so everything that happens in courtrooms makes perfect sense to me, and my job is to try to make it make sense to an audience.
What's causing the rise in book banning? On my podcast, Velshi Banned Book Club, I speak with authors of banned books to try and find out.
I think what they're really objecting to is that a young person has perceived the hypocrisy and corruption of the generation that has created their world.
This book saved me in a lot of ways, and then I published it hoping to help people find a blueprint to heal.
Season 2 of Velshi Banned Book Club. All episodes available now.
A U.S. senator destroyed by blackmail.
He was not bound by the truth or by facts.
The country's most outrageous political demagogue, ascending toward the peak of American power.
Millions upon millions of devoted followers.
This is a story of heroes willing to face down tyranny and the risk to the country if they fail.
Rachel Maddow presents Ultra, Season 2 of the chart-topping original podcast. All episodes available now.
When I worked for Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, I learned about commitment. Senator Moynihan committed his life to government service. This is what commitment looks like. Building New York's newest train station was Senator Moynihan's idea. It took 30 years and never giving up. When we register to vote, we make a lifetime commitment to democracy, a commitment to vote for all levels of government, working together to build a better America.
Severe weather events have become an all too common part of our lives. They are growing more severe all the time, and their link to climate change is undeniable.
Climate scientists have been warning more 100-degree days in future years.
As a country and as a planet, we need to cut our emissions to try to limit the worst effects of climate change.
Congress and the rest of the country needs to start taking this seriously, or it's just going to get worse.
It's how we respond as a global community that's going to define the next chapters of the climate crisis.
What's causing the rise in book banning? On my podcast, Velshi Banned Book Club, I speak with authors of banned books to try and find out.
This book saved me in a lot of ways, and then I published it hoping to help people find a blueprint to heal.
Season 2 of Velshi Banned Book Club, all episodes available now.
Andrea Mitchell reports, weekdays at noon on MSNBC.
Save.
Welcome back to our coverage of the presidential election. It is 1:52 a.m., which means we're obviously at our best. At this point, 2 of the 7 swing states have been called by NBC News. North Carolina and Georgia have both been projected as having been won by Republican candidate Donald Trump. Now, on the Democratic side, the campaign that had posted up at Howard University in Washington, D.C., the alma mater of Democratic candidate Kamala Harris, the co-chair of the campaign, Cedric Richmond, came out and told the assembled crowd there, as our correspondent told us, as Michelle Norris told us, the increasingly somber crowd there told them basically to go home, that Vice President Harris would not be making any remarks tonight, that she will be speaking both to Howard University and to the nation tomorrow, and so that sort of ended the event, at least the physical in-person event for the Harris campaign tonight at Howard University. On the Republican side, Donald Trump has been watching election returns at his home/private club/membership club thing at Mar-a-Lago, and has since moved to the Palm Beach Convention Center, where his supporters have been gathered over the course of the evening watching returns, and they are now preparing to hear from their candidate. We don't know exactly when Donald Trump is going to speak or exactly what the character of his remarks will be. Our own Vaughn Hilliard is at the convention center. He's been covering the Trump campaign throughout this, for the duration, and has been there tonight as that crowd has become increasingly exuberant and excited about the results that they're seeing in this race. Vaughn, what are you expecting, if anything, if you have any reason to have any expectation in terms of what we're going to hear from their candidate tonight?
Right, Rachel, I think it's notable, number one, that he's waiting to take the stage. Of course, the hope from this campaign is that this race would be completely called in his favor and he would be declared the 47th president-elect of the United States of America. Of course, North Carolina and Georgia, I was told, were 2 states that they were specifically waiting to be called before he took the stage. NBC News has called both of those states. And when you're looking at the battleground data that is coming in through the Midwest, right now the Trump campaign officials are telling us that they're very eager about the direction that this is going. And I think it's important to kind of scene set for everybody what this event venue looks like tonight. Donald Trump, he was first watching the results come in alongside the likes of UFC's Dana White, Elon Musk, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at his Mar-a-Lago estate, Roger Stone, other close family, friends, and allies and campaign advisors. Of course, after the January 6th insurrection, there were a great many staffers from that White House that left Trump world and those that stuck around at Mar-a-Lago as he sort of existed down here in Florida in isolation, it's those folks who 3.5 years later are the ones here in West Palm Beach at the convention center about to celebrate alongside Donald Trump as he either declares victory or gives the indication that he intends to in the days ahead. You're talking about the likes of Rudy Giuliani, who is here. You're talking about Roger Stone. These are folks that have really stood by Donald Trump through these years, and it's not Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis who are going to be joining him on stage, but it's those loyalists, including at the staff level, that are going to be the ones that take his side here tonight. We expect J.D. Vance, who we are told went from Mar-a-Lago here in the motorcade with Donald Trump. J.D. Vance, who 8 years ago was on our own air saying that the country should be warned about what Donald Trump could potentially do to this country, referring to him as America's Hitler. But in 2022, he ultimately ran with the Trump endorsement. And since then, he has been by his side. We are going to see J.D. Vance here take the stage alongside Donald Trump. So there's a lot at play when we're looking at what this administration could very well look like, guys, from the extent to aid to Ukraine, from Elon Musk and whether he actually takes a role in this federal government. Elon Musk himself has said that he intends to cut the federal budget by 1/3. That's $2 trillion. Of course, you have conversation around Social Security, defense spending, Medicaid and Medicare. You have the likes of conversations that go at the use of the Department of Justice. Steve Bannon has been airing his podcast, War Room, from the Willard Hotel in Washington, D.C., alongside the likes of Jeffrey Clark, of course, who was the individual that Donald Trump had tried to install as Attorney General after the 2020 election when he was trying to hold on to power. And so for Donald Trump, he and his team, they have made the case for the last years that the country was by his side, not only the Republican Party, but they were going to effectively be able to build the MAGA movement. And so far, what our data has shown us is that he was able to grow support among voters of color, the young voters. And for him and his coalition, he did it while acting as his unvarnished self, denigrating his opponents, suggesting that prosecutors that went after him should be jailed. This weekend suggesting that members of the press, that he would be fine with them being shot. There's a reckoning here of whether Donald Trump is ultimately called the victor in this race or not. Of course, the ballots are going to be counted, but at a minimum, the MAGA movement has grown over the course of 9 years, and we have watched it up close, and Donald Trump feels like this Republican Party is not only his, but also the American electorate here has given him a resounding head nod that they back his intended use of a greater executive office and a teaming up with a Republican Congress potentially that could very well pass the MAGA agenda that Donald Trump has been clearly outlining for the American public over the course of these last years. Rachel.
Vaughn, in terms of what happens next, one of the things that's been sort of an unusual, like a thing to kind of, it's hard to get your head around, and the reporting on it has been really fuzzy, is that the Trump campaign didn't participate, at least didn't seem to participate in any of the standard transition things that campaigns are supposed to do. The way the transition process is structured, it's supposed to be set up so that if either candidate from either major party wins, each of them already has plenty of runway, plenty of on-ramp, plenty of ability to integrate their transition team seamlessly into the government so they can take office on inauguration day one sort of seamlessly. The Trump campaign has refused to do any of that. And in fact, Trump has refused intelligence briefings throughout the campaign itself. And so part of the question here is how well stood up are they as a professional organization in order to take on the responsibilities of governing if that is in fact what's going to happen here?
Howard Lutnick and Linda McMahon are the two co-chairs of the Transition Project, and I was talking with Howard Lutnick, who insisted to me just the other day that he has been engaged in phone calls with the litany of not only top executives but other political allies, as Donald Trump will make very clear who he intends to surround himself with in this administration. But you've also seen members of Congress, but also people like Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who have been traveling with him on the campaign trail. You know, I covered the transition 8 years ago when Donald Trump was living at Trump Tower in Midtown Manhattan at the time, and a great many people came up and down those elevators to meet with him. We could see, I'm told, a similar operation taking place here out of Palm Beach, Florida, and Mar-a-Lago, effectively serving as the transition office. I was talking to one potential staffer who was indicating to me that they could envision sort of half of the operation being here, the other half being in Washington, D.C. I think that this is, Rachel, a transition here that, one, Donald Trump has been very keen and very specific that he would intend to only have loyalists around here. Of course, Johnny McEntee, who is a part of Project 2025, used to be his director of personnel in the White House. They were building a database in which they were taking essentially applications from potential MAGA political appointees. There's about 3,000 political appointees in the executive branch that are appointed by the President of the United States. And I've been told that that database still exists. And to the extent that the transition team would like to use it, it could be made available to them. And when you're looking at J.D. Vance as being the vice presidential pick, it was back in 2021. I remember listening to his podcast while he was actually running for the U.S. Senate in Ohio. And I was driving through Ohio listening to quite a lengthy podcast. And he talked about the federal civil workforce and his intent, believing that most of the civil workforce should be fired, saying that, in his words, that 95% of them were liberals and that they should be replaced with individuals who pledged to uphold the Trump agenda, as he was foreshadowing a second Trump administration come 2025. Of course, J.D. Vance has been a little bit more cagey about those previous statements, but there are allies from Project 2025, J.D. Vance, who have suggested that they want to ensure that there are more loyal civil servants. And Schedule F was something that was actually signed, an executive order by Donald Trump just before he left the White House in 2020, which would have effectively allowed potentially thousands, if not tens of thousands, of federal civil servant jobs to be turned into political appointments. And so the anticipation is that Donald Trump would sign a similar executive order to give his executive branch greater authority to make more federal career employees a political appointee so that they could be more easily removed. There's a lot of layers to this, Rachel. I know that you guys are not naive to the conversations of what a federal or what the executive branch under Donald Trump could look like, but they have made the case, people like Jeffrey Clark and Steve Bannon, that everything from the Department of Justice on down should be directed by the President of the United States. The President is the chief executive, and therefore what the departments and agencies that fall under the President, that he should have greater authority over, for example, the prosecutions that take place. This is, if Donald Trump is declared the 47th President of the United States, it's going to be a very intense several weeks as we ask questions about exactly whether people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are actually going to be tasked with overseeing the U.S.'s 13 different health agencies and the HHS and potentially vaccine policy. And those are conversations that would begin immediately just a couple miles from where we are, theoretically over at his Mar-a-Lago estate.
Don Hilliard, thank you very much. I would be interrupting you if you had not just concluded your remarks, because NBC News has a projection to make in the presidential contest in the swing state of Pennsylvania. NBC News now projects that that presidential contest has been won by Donald Trump. Now, I believe that means that we are at a 266 electoral vote count for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris at 194 electoral votes. So to be clear here, this is the third of the 7 major swing states that have been called. But Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, as those 3 states, presents an almost unless there's it presents an insurmountable future here for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic ticket. In terms of what's going to happen here next, we are expecting that Donald Trump is going to speak to the Palm Beach Convention Center in Florida. We've seen in the backdrop there, while we are speaking with Vaughn, we've seen how excited the crowd is. You see the crowd there now wrapped, waiting for Donald Trump to speak. We do not have guidance as to when Trump's remarks will happen, but we expect that it could be any moment now. Chris Hayes, with the projection in Pennsylvania, we pretty much know how this is going to end.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. I think the writing has been on the wall. And, you know, one of the jobs that we all have in the media is to be truthful with people and transparent. We're very transparent about the process that brought us to this point. I'll just say this as we're preparing for Trump to take the stage. You know, Steve was going through the numbers. We have this very funky and terrible system called the Electoral College, which decides elections in a way that's totally different than every other election in the United States decided, and the way that anything's decided anywhere else in the world. We should scrap it. From the perspective of basic democratic legitimacy, which is something I'm pretty concerned about, something we talk about a lot on this network, it looks possible that Donald Trump might emerge with a popular vote majority when all the votes.
We won't know for a long time.
We won't know for a long time, but this is not outside the realm of possibility. The Electoral College looks strongly in his favor. And if that is the case, if he has won the election, then he has won the election. And the reason I say that is because we've spent many years talking about democracy and its vibrancy and the importance of the peaceful transfer of power. We had a violent insurrection staged against the constitutional order by the man we're expecting to speak here, who urged his supporters to march to that Capitol, where they assaulted police officers and attempted to essentially steal power away from the majority of the country that had voted for Joe Biden. It's really important to note that while I believe that institutions have failed dramatically in putting us in the position we are, including the Supreme Court and other institutions, the Republican Party, that if he won, then he won. And that's what the Constitution says. It's what our current constitutional order says. It's what Democratic majorities, at least in the swing states, the Electoral College, have said. And that means we're in a new world for this country, but the sort of preservation of American democracy and the constitutional order begins as an ongoing process anew tomorrow.
Steph, go ahead, but just keep your eyes on that monitor because we are expecting these remarks any moment.
But unlike 2016, there are no surprises, right? In 2016,
Yes.
Many people in this country said, you know, I'm sick of the system. I want something different. Let's see what this gives us. When you talk about what happened in 2020, this whole country, this whole world saw it. People know exactly who they're getting, and they chose this. So as we go into this next phase, I'm sure for the next month, it's going to be an autopsy of Kamala Harris's campaign and what she did or didn't do. I don't actually think this is about Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. I think this is about the American people. We know exactly who he is, and we, or the majority of the people who voted for him and created this outcome, chose this.
And I think that's the important point, right? To elect is to choose. To vote is to choose. And you were never given, I think, in the modern era, a clearer choice than voters were given in this election. In 2016, Trump was, at least as a politician, an unknown quantity. People knew him as a television star, people knew him from TV, and that's all they really knew. But to Stephanie's point, they absolutely know not just who he is, but who he closed as. Calling a powerful woman the B word, his running mate calling Kamala Harris garbage, trash, calling her trash. We're going to take out the trash, vowing to arrest his supporters, you know, talking about Liz Cheney being shot in the face. I mean, and so it's not as if this was a surprise being pulled on the American people. This was a very clear message. It was not done through a ground game. This was Elon Musk doing a fake lottery in Pennsylvania. This was not a ground game situation. This was nothing to do with Kamala Harris's campaign, which was, again, flawlessly run in 100 days. And so that wasn't the reason for the choice. And so whatever the reason for the choice was, a choice is made, and then you get what you chose. And so if Donald Trump then does what he has promised to do, people need to understand that he didn't pull one over on the American people when he does it. If he does the things he said he was going to do, it was chosen by this country, at least by a majority of voters.
And the media didn't get snookered. And the media didn't get snookered on his policies or Elon Musk. Just 2 nights ago, Rachel laid out for our audience the national security risk and the conflicts that Elon Musk poses. This isn't the media let, all of those surrogates on TV and you got... All of it has been laid out, and this is what was chosen.
I'll just say one thing, I think. One of the weird axes that sort of developed over the course of this campaign, to your point about sort of choices, was a sort of pro-system, anti-system dynamic. And one of the very intentional cultivations of the Trump campaign was the kind of anti-system people. Like, you bring RFK into your coalition to get his voters, right? Like the sort of, the conspiracists or the skeptics or the people that are like, it's all corrupt and it's all rigged and it's all wrong. And that axis, has ended up, I think, being a potent one. I think we see it in some of the realignment figures we're seeing.
All right, guys. So,
the valence of that should also be viewed in the context of
Donald Trump is 4 votes away. Electoral college votes. The race to 270. He's got 266. He's got 266. Kamala Harris has 194. So that means that basically Donald Trump is the next president. So for all of those that did not vote, thank you. For those that did vote, thank you. For those that voted for Kamala Harris, thank you. Thanks for trying. I met a young lady in the grocery store today and I asked her, did you vote? She said, no. I said, why not? Because they're going to vote for who they want to vote for anyway. They're going to choose who they want to choose anyway. So if that one person and millions of other people think the same way, that's why we're at where we're at. So whatever happens, guys, whatever happens, do not complain. Do not complain. Whatever happens, do not complain. We're going to sign out, guys. I've had enough. He's got 4 more points, or he's going to get that easily. So it's over with. Well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. We'll be on TikTok posting some reactions, and I'll have a full reaction video later on this morning that I'm gonna prepare. I'm gonna prepare that video for us this morning, and we'll be back on here. It won't be live. It'll just be something posted on our YouTube channel. It'll be in my stories on Facebook, and then it'll be on TikTok also. All right. So thank you so much for joining us for the Vote 2020. I'm your host, Andre Jaho. Check us out on our website, theundisputednetwork.com. That's undisputednetwork.com. Your content belongs here. All right, guys. And thank you so much for the Live So Graceful Sisterhood for sponsoring this program. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Right here on Politics Unfiltered. Right here on Black News Undisputed, where your voice matters. Peace.